Game of Thrones, The Rage of Spreading Flames. Welcome back, brave explorers of impossible worlds. We are excited to have you here to continue this odyssey together. Before we continue, everything you'll hear is pure fiction, so please don't try to replicate combat techniques at home. This wonderful story in all its rights belong to its brilliant original author. We are only the messengers of entertainment. Want another dose of adventure? Subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a single chapter. And if you want to support us directly and enjoy exclusive content, check out our Ko-Fi. Chapter 101 The Issue, Happy New Year. Targaryen was brought down by the Baratheon family. Both are natural enemies and there is no possibility of compromise at all. There is no right or wrong, only a position, unless one side gives up everything about it. Daenerys is in poverty. He did not give up, and did not give up to marry the barbarians. Can Leonor give up sitting on the Iron Throne? Then how do you want to deal with them? Oberyn frowned slightly. He didn't like such an entangled power struggle. First of all, I have to confirm her situation, especially the 3 dragons. Dragon, there is nothing to be afraid of. His Highness Oberyn, I think you, as a martyr family, are the most touching. Leonor smiled and said, Aegon I launched the Conqueror War and relied on the dragon to conquer 6 of the 7 kingdoms in a row. However, there was no way to deal with the kingdom of Dorne. The Dornes used reasonable tactics to avoid the dragon flame, and even successfully counterattacked and shot to death a giant dragon. Those are all over. Oberyn sighed. A good idea. It's all over the past. Let's just care about it now. Leonor smiled and said to everyone seriously, I need someone who knows the land of Essos to answer my questions for me now. I'll do it. Oberyn sighed at this moment. The guards returned with several men in grey robe and bowed to Leonor and said, Your Majesty, the scribe you need is here. It's just right. Come, paper for His Highness Oberyn. Leonor waved and asked the scribe to give Oberyn a piece of paper. Oberyn's eyes opened slightly as the thin scribe walked past and lowered a piece of snow white paper in front of the table. What is this? Oberyn took the snow white paper and felt that it was extremely soft, but it was very fragile, not parchment. You can think of it as another kind of parchment. Come on. Your Highness, if you draw too late, I might be buried in the dragon flame. Next moment, Leonor asked Oberyn to call and paint map. Under his repeated urging, Oberyn had to give up his curiosity about a paper first, and instead used a charcoal pen sent by another scribe to draw an irregular rectangle on the paper and pointing to the rectangle. The lower left corner of the shape said to everyone, This is Essos. This is a place of controversy. It was originally connected to Westeros through the arm of Dorne. Legend has it that the son of the forest destroyed it with magic, so it became the Stone Stairs Island today. From the disputed land to the east, there was the former ancient fortress of Valyria, and now it is also a ruin, and further east is. Oberyn outlined the Essos for everyone with paper and pen. The map shows the approximate geographical location one by one, and the location of the Dothraki Sea and the Red Desert. When Oberyn said almost exactly, Leonor stepped forward and saw that Slave Bay was located in the north of the Red Desert, so he pointed to him and said, Send people to Slave Bay first. Daenerys will return to Westeros and must come back from here. She brings the dragon, and no one will ignore her existence. Then, she will definitely find out about our movements. Oh, Targaryen, who owns the dragon, is afraid she still has to have some fun there. What then? Oberyn originally thought that Leonor wanted to arrange an assassination or a siege, but he didn't expect that he would come and go, and that would be gone. Send people to get familiar with the good masters, virtuous masters and great masters of Slave Bay. I said. Where did those slave traders get such big faces? Leonor couldn't help but complain about the evil customs of slave traders. It was probably burned away by the dragon flames, and the ancient Jith Empire was destroyed by the Valyrians who possessed the dragon. Oberyn couldn't help laughing. That's really miserable. In short, if you are familiar with those guys, don't rush to offer rewards or something. First, take a look at what her galaxy wants to do, and then have some fun for her. I believe she always has enemies. Leonor also laughed, making everyone laugh. It's over here. Oberyn curled his smile, still a little unbelievable. What do you want me to do? Send an army across such a long distance, or send an assassin? Leonor rolled his eyes. My Majesty, if it is an assassin, I have a choice. Varys said in time. Who? That Mormon, Leonor blurted out. He remembered that the old licking dog was indeed Varys' spy, but later he jumped back because he couldn't bear to carry out the assassination. He said this without hesitation, but it made Varys's face pale. Okay. People can't think about it for a moment and always make some mistakes. If that guy comes back, I will forgive his sins. Leonor decided to tell Mormont a little. Licking dogs is not a serious sin. He sincerely told that get Daenerys' life-working guy away and see how far Daenerys can go. Yes, Varys dared not disobey and could only respond, "Do you have any other additions to this matter?" Leonor asked the others, and the result was that everyone shook their heads. Targaryen is making a comeback, and Baratheon is also worried about. The king is not in a hurry now. Everyone is in a hurry. Anyway, they don't need to live and die with the Targaryen family. At that time, you can just change the king. If you don't, just write this topic well. The resolution is like this. Yes, remember to remind me to ask about the situation regularly. Leonor glanced at the paper handed by the scribe, and saw that the handwriting was clear and the words were clear. He nodded, couldn't help but look at the thin and small scribe, and had some impression of him, so he asked him to remind himself. When do you want to remind you? The scribe asked in a low voice. About the next meeting. Who'll handle this matter? Vincent, come on. Write it down. Leonor assigned the task to Vincent before Varys was about to take on the task, so he asked him to let him go. The scribe took the record and turned his head to everyone and said, "Okay, let's start the next issue now. Vincent, don't forget to reply to me how you arranged it." Before the new issue began, Leonor mentioned to the Breast brothers, "Your Majesty, I'll make a record too. I'm afraid I'll forget it." Vincent was a little confused, but came to his senses and felt that he might forget it if he talked too much, so he also asked for a piece of paper and what he was about to do. "Remember it, let's talk about the next issue quickly. If there is no issue, I will announce the end of the meeting. If something happens in the future, whoever is responsible for it." Leonor pointed at everyone and scolded, "Your Majesty, Mrs. Sheila Hayon of Herrenberg has passed away. She has no descendants, and the Hayon family has no descendants." Met stepped forward and asked something. "So, what's the problem?" Leonor asked. "According to tradition, the kingdom should have chosen a new Count of Herrenberg." Mess reminded Leonor and couldn't wait to add, "If you don't have the right person, I can recommend a few. I'll talk about this later, and the topic will be recorded to the next time." The next issue, Leonor directly held on. He was about to reclaim the territory now. How could Herrenberg be sent out again? Chapter 102 Recorder. Will the next issue be so soon? Mess slashed his mouth and said, "A Delling Earl of the Isle is dead. Who is this?" Leonor was speechless. Why did Lord Metz either report this or that death? When Stannis surrounded the counterattack of Wind and Sniffle Castle, the Earl of the Isle you can annihilate. Mess reminded carefully, "Oh, this man. Why did he die at a young age? Has he participated in the battle to fight against the Western Front?" Leonor remembered. Wasn't that a young knight attended to killed Stannis' enthronement? The Earl of the Island was awarded the title. I don't know that his widow, Miss Anna Buckler from Coppergate, hopes to inherit her husband's territory. Metz made an application for the widow of the lower noble. Check the cause of his death. Leonor was a little irritated. He couldn't let go of things easily. He asked someone to review them first. Yes, Mess did not dare to neglect, and nodded quickly, then waved to the scribe, and asked the scribe to give him a note, and then wrote down the problem and let him do it. Reward this matter next time. The next issue, Leonor first recorded it with the scribe, and then asked the next issue. The lords of Crown Nest City and Rain House City ask you to give them golden dragons to make up for their losses in the war in the western frontier. Mess quickly remembered the death of the Earl of the Island, and at the same time said to Leonor, "Start the next thing. What about the opinions of the Prime Minister and the Chief Inspector?" Leonor looked at Messa and Oberon calmly. "Your Majesty, your vault doesn't have much money." Metz asked a sincere question, but what he didn't know was that the vault was not too much, but was completely gone. The last amount of money had been transferred to Davos for use. "Govern the King's Landing City, Your Highness." Leonor saw that Mess could not say anything, so he looked at Oberon opposite him. "My Majesty, it is the duty of the nobles and knights to provide military service to the throne, and this is not a job." Oberon spoke more clearly, "And according to your declaration and announcement, the rewards for this war are all won by individuals. It was agreed in advance that it was entirely up to personal abilities. The Crocun City and Yuwu City were unable to gain it in the war. That was their own abilities, and there was no additional reward if the Crow Nest City and Yuwu City are rewarded. What should we do if the lords of Togman City and other fiefdoms use this to seek rewards? How much do you plan to spend to satisfy them next time you go to war, Mr. Mess? Did you hear it? Leonor looked at the inflatable fish again. Okay, I will reject this request for you, Mess nodded repeatedly. Slippery guy. Facing the inflatable fish that nodded repeatedly, Leonor and Oberon cursed in their hearts. Mets would not be unable to see the relevant interests, but he did not want to be this evil person if he didn't speak up, so he deliberately gave the evil person to Leonor and Oberon. Leonor became more and more angry as he looked at it. He thought that since he had become a villain, it would be better to do it all in one step, and said to Mets, let the Earl of Crow's Nest City and the Earl of Rainhouse City go back and think about it carefully. How much effort did they put into the war? I will give them the Iron Throne. Do they dare to ask for it? This was a bit heavy. The inflatable fish was so scared that he held his breath and did not dare to speak. However, Leonor did not continue to give him a look, but said to the scribe, record this issue and remind me to ask those two guys about their responses. The next issue, Your Majesty. My supervisor has heard that recently bandits called themselves Little Group have emerged in the western region. They are moving everywhere, burning farmlands in the western region and attacking villages. This time the question is a baron. What is raised is the issue of public security in the western region. Lion Group? What does they have to do with Lannister? What did Landeo do? Where is the army in his hands? What are the new lords in the west doing? Ask them for me, Abel and Lola S. Rogmer. Do they want to welcome Lannister's return? Leonor asked several questions in a row. Even though Oberon was extremely calm, he couldn't help but sweat on his forehead. He asked the scribe to take paper and note the problem, so that he could follow the implementation. Next topic. The meeting was silent. No problem. Leonor's voice heavier. Your Majesty, there are still some questions, but I can't remember it for the moment now. Mess explained to Leonor in a nearly mumbled voice that he couldn't remember it. So this is the meaning of recording. Go back and think about it carefully, write it together with a pen, and raise it at the next meeting. Leonor snorted. A good memory is not as good as a bad pen, and the Westeros still have short knowledge. Now, yes, Maze nodded repeatedly, and Oberon and others next to him also snatched their eyebrows awkwardly. They also had a lot of things, but they didn't just forget it, but they couldn't remember it when the matter was about to come. Perhaps, sometimes it takes some notes, and everyone thinks of it. Can you give me some paper and pen? Oberon spoke politely to the scribe beside him. He noticed that although the white paper was fragile, it was lighter than parchment, and should be cheaper to take notes with. You good, do business for the kingdom, free of charge. Leonor saw Oberon asking for paper and pen, but waved his hand generously, asking the scribe to have enough paper and pen to distribute it. That's great, thank you for your generosity, Your Majesty. Oberon couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and accepted after everyone got the paper and pen, except for Metz, who already lives in the Prime Minister's tower. Everyone else chose to leave. Leonor did not leave. He stayed in the conference hall and waited for the scribes to sort out the meeting minutes and read them carefully. After a moment of the recorded content, nodded slightly, first glanced at the scribe, and saw 7 or 8 people, so he asked, who among you is the leader? The scribes had a low status and no one spoke. Everyone just silently looked at a thin guy. Your Majesty, my name is Stephen. The thin scribe naturally stepped forward. Okay, Stephen, you will be the recorder here in the future. You will be responsible for directing other record waiters and keeping records of the meeting. You have sorted out today's meeting minutes well, and you must prepare the topics for the next meeting in advance. Leonor asked the scribe. Yes, Your Majesty. What issues need to be removed? The thin Stephen was very smart, the one about Herrenberg. Leonor glanced at Metz next to him and scratched the records about Herrenberg Lord on the paper with his fingertips. He did not want to hear this issue at the next meeting. Recorder Stephen bowed, and Metz, who was standing beside him, held his stomach and slashed his mouth, trying to say something, but finally he held it back. He felt that he should not mess with this matter. It is better to speak, but today I have offended His Majesty the King because of many things. Chapter 103 Operation. Leonor brought not only meeting minutes, but also a new meeting model, which greatly improved the work efficiency of the imperial meeting. After several meetings, many backlogged problems were solved, and the king, the series of ministers with a core of hand, also had things to do, and the power of the kingdom began to work. The ever-moving power will drive the country to change continuously and towards strength and prosperity, and this also requires more talents, and the bachelors of the school city make up for it. Previously, Leonor asked someone to send a raven to Zucheng, asking them to send more bachelors to serve him. Zucheng's chief manager also regarded this as an opportunity to expand his influence, and combined ravens and botany. A total of 16 bachelors from various fields such as pharmacy, history, economics, medicine, military, and forging went to King's Landing. Leonor held a banquet in the King's Hall to welcome the bachelors and allocate their positions on their subjects and majors. After a round of understanding, Leonor passed the interview and assigned on the spot among the many bachelors from Zucheng, except for the Bachelor of Economics. Marseilles can directly serve as the Minister of Finance. Other bachelors are not enough to directly serve as the Minister of Finance. Grattan, a Bachelor of Military Science, and Barry Donderian became the candidates for the Minister of Military Science. Bachelor of Science, Melbourne, Cara and Forging Moore, businessman Tob Mott, became the candidates for the Minister of Agriculture, and Bachelor of Pharmacy, Abel, Rayang, Bachelor of Medicine, Bourne, and Sam went to Pachel as assistants. The arrival of the Bachelor added a lot of people, because there were no bachelors assigned to their positions in the major they studied, and Leonor did not deport him, but stayed at Red Fort to arrange tasks, such as the Bachelor of Ravens. Honor was responsible for establishing a new Raven Farms, breed more ravens. Alvin, a Bachelor of Warhorse Science, is responsible for establishing horse farms, and is responsible for cultivating better war horses. Those bachelors who are not professionally available can also carry out popular education work to train scribes for him. Professional talents like accounting among the 9 ministers and the current affairs. After such supplements, although the positions of the law ministers, etiquette ministers and foreign ministers are still empty, fortunately, key links such as military and economics can already operate. Leonor assigned personnel in place, and then began to arrange work, requiring the popularization of new technologies and tools, the production of new armor and weapons, as well as the development of King's Landing, the training and command of the army, etc. These things were already planned. And now the talents are in place and can be directly invested in implementation. Although there is still some funds left, Leonor's vault has begun to be abundant. First of all, Donald Noy from the Midsummer Hall to King's Landing City. He brought Leonor 500,000 golden dragons. This is the wealth accumulated by the Midsummer Hall over the past few years by firing pottery. Now all of them have been escorted to King's Landing. The city is for his use immediately after Donner. Religious taxation co-chaired by the garrison commander Dorrit and Vincent was also effectively implemented. Faced with sword force, the archbishop and 7 archbishops gritted their teeth and handed over to Leonor taxes of up to 200,000 golden dragons a year with 700,000 golden dragons as the foundation. The renovation plan of Junlin City was officially implemented. The former flea nest was flattened, and it was transformed into a blacksmith workshop, piled up bunches of blast furnaces, continuously creating various types farm tools and iron supplies. Leonor currently has a manual support stage for agriculture. Not only is it allowed to own land, but it also has the use of agricultural tools and seeds on credit. After the farmers harvest, they use grain to pay the debt. This successfully formed an early cycle, waiting for the farmers till the farming technology was mature and the kingdom had enough food. At that time, it could rely on resources to regulate the market and stabilize the income of craftsmen and farmers. Leonor made drastic moves on the area centered on King's Landing, but was much gentler to the Stormland. After Cotton Ponless arrived at King's Landing with Edric, he appointed Donner Noy as the new Stormland governor. Will take over at Stormfort instead of himself, check the territory of the Stormland, and then implement the work of dividing and increasing production. The Stormland does not belong only to the Baratheon family, but also to the families of Buckler, Icemond, Wild, Meljan, Sven, Karen, Fair, Sirmi, and other families. It is impossible to collect the territory in one breath, but you can take it slowly. Leonor's main goal is to allocate the territory directly under Fanxi Castle to ensure that the land is cultivated and grain can be produced stably. This is the biggest goal. Another goal is to ask them to continue to pay taxes and continue to provide military services to him. This is their own responsibility. If they cannot continue to serve, or the service results are not ideal, they will directly take back their territory. In short, there are ways to deal with it, and the order to give grace is redundant. Donner Noy went to the Stormland, and Cotton Ponless, who originally brought Robert's illegitimate son Edric, went to the west to serve as the governor of the West, responsible for the various governance work of the Western aristocrats. He also applied the Stormland model, mainly ensure land production. The nobles are obedient, and if they are not obedient, they will suppress them and take back the territory. In this way, the entire king's territory, the Stormland, and some western territory had all fallen under Leonor's rule and began to operate according to his will. Just as this prosperous time, some people complained inside the Prime Minister's tower, there is another new imperial meeting. Leonor sits high on the throne. In his lower position, Metz sits opposite Oberon, Balliston and Davos respectively, and the remaining ministers they sat at their own tables because there are too many people. It is impossible to sit at the same table together. Therefore, in the new imperial meeting, except for Leano, who was the host, each person had a table with paper and pen on it. As for the scribes who recorded the meeting, they sat on it. On the long table in the corner, Your Majesty, you must deal with the traitors in the Iron Islands as soon as possible. Those guys are so hateful. Mess's face was flushed and he sat upwards on the table and said, 4 months ago, they took advantage of the situation. You occupied Callan Bay when you attacked Callan Bay, and a month ago they gave up Callan Bay and attacked the Shield Islands. The battles of the pirates were despicable and shameless, burning all farmlands and buildings, and plundering them. After the population, we must not sit idly by, facing the endless talk of mess. Leano even wanted to yawn. The Iron Islands were very cruel. Fortunately, the ones who plundered were not his territory. Callan Bay is in the hands of the northern border, while the Shield Islands is a key maritime land controlled by the River Bay. Those pirates have escaped now. Oberon was a little impatient. That despicable Baron was once depressed by his Robert, but now he has become king again. Mess wanted to rouse Leonor's anger so that he could send troops to destroy the Iron Islands. The Iron Islands attacked the north. I remember that the Stark family had an adopted son of Greyjoy. How is he? Leonor suddenly said. Chapter 104 The North Envoy. Hearing Leonor mentioning the adopted son of the Greyjoy family in the Stark family, many officials in the Prime Minister's tower were shocked, and the red venomous snake Oberon also stood up and went to Leonor first. A gift, then continued, Your Majesty, this is exactly what I want to report to you. The North has sent an envoy, who is the only son of Baron Greyjoy, in the 289th year of Aegon, just a few years after Robert ascended the throne, the Iron Islands launched a rebellion. Baron Greyjoy had already become king at that time, but was eventually defeated by the coalition forces commanded by Robert. His 2 sons were killed in the war, and his only son, Theon Greyjoy, was taken to Winterfell by Ed Stark, which was the one who was raised by Theon Greyjoy. If the correct historical trend was followed, Theon Greyjoy should have taken advantage of the tight war in the Hegian area in the north and persuaded Robb, who was commanding the troops, to return to the Iron Islands by looking for reinforcements, which eventually triggered a series of a bleak fate. But when the western border was conquered, the northern border army could not eat Jin'ai City, and there was no trouble at all. Therefore, there was no saying that they would ask for help from the Iron Islands. Theon avoided his own fate and was able to come to King's Landing as an envoy. What does Robb Stark want to say? Leonor leaned into the chair, making himself feel comfortable while thinking about something. The messenger from the north actually conveyed the message through Oberon. It looked read, The Viper sets up a line with the north through the Stark sisters. Both Tyriel and Mardell want to contact the Stark family. Leonor did not promise either party, but did not stop them from further action. He had the idea of letting go. Now, Oberon robbed him. The opportunity has come. Robert Stark wants to ask His Majesty to release his 2 sisters, and his aunt, Lisa Tully. That's all. Leonor raised his eyebrows slightly. The Stark family also mentioned one thing, saying that it has been almost 10 years since the South has not seen winter. A baron mentioned another thing, I haven't seen winter for almost 10 years. Yes. Since the Battle of Fanxi Castle, Westeros has not seen winter for a long time. This does not mean a good harvest, but rather means that the next winter will be long. The longer the winter time, the colder the climate in the north. Robb Stark is showing weakness to himself. Without the support of the South, the northern border would not be able to survive such a long winter year. The Big Wolf is also very smart. He actually shows weakness to himself from this aspect. Leonor praised Robb Stark in his heart, and then continued to ask, what about the Iron Islands? Well, by the way, the messenger he sent was Greyjoy. Yes, Theon Greyjoy also said that he will replace the North and his brother Robb comes to King's Landing to serve you allegiance. Oberon conveyed the meaning of the North, and the people of the North want to sold to Theon and the Iron Islands for Sansa and Arya. This kind of allegiance has no effect. My Majesty, if Robb Stark does not want to betray you, he should come to King's Landing to be loyal to you. Mess spoke angrily, and the northern border was also haunted by the Iron Islands, but he did not have any empathy with the North. Instead, he felt that the Stark family was annoying and that the Stark sisters were good hostages. What do you think? Leonor did not reply, but looked at the people in the field. I think as a king, you shouldn't use this method to rule the country. Davos stood up directly. What method? Leonor blinked. Taking hostages for women and women. Davos spoke bluntly, causing a stir in the palace. Messa and Oberon's faces were a little unhappy, but Barristan showed a look of praise. Sir Seaworth, you don't understand Westeros political rules. Don't comment, sit down. Leonor twitched the corner of his mouth. The Onion Knight was really brave enough to say it, and it was a bit of a show-off, but also a bit sincere. Yes, Your Majesty. Davos sat back obediently. Are there any other ideas? You can raise them, Leonor asked. There was a whispering discussion in the Prime Minister's tower, and no one stood up. Since no one says it again, then my 3 ministers, please tell me how we should respond to the requirements of the northern border. Leonor asked the 3 ministers in the front of the imperial court to give a plan. He is not a god, and he cannot give a plan every time. Reject. Maze, of course, rejected all proposals from the north unless Robb Stark came to King's Landing to sworn allegiance. I think the Stark sisters can be released. Release goodwill to the north, and avoid war, but leave Lisa Tully as a hostage. A baron also gave his own plan. I think sending Lisa Tully to Winterfell is His Majesty Robert's decision. As for the Stark sisters, they have never been hostages. Barristan also gave his own opinion, but it is not from a political perspective. Just do as the Great Knight. Leonor thought for a moment and finally chose Barristan's plan. He wanted to kill Lisa Tully directly, but this matter was a bit corrupt, so he should first take a look and try to kill the person to the north. Your Majesty, Mess and Oberon spoke together. If you have different opinions, you can mention them. By the way, Theon Greyjoy stays. I will meet you another day. Leonor held down Mets and Oberon's opinions. Your Majesty, I object to letting Sister Stark leave King's Landing. Mess tried to object. Yes, I know. Leonor nodded. Lysha Tully is related to the Eastern Territory and is not suitable for being sent to the Northern Territory. Oberon also made his opinion that the Stark family is very likely to control the power of the Eastern Territory through Lysha Tully. I know. Okay, I've received your opinions. Leonor waved his hand. Mess's idea didn't need to be cared about. Oberon wanted to release the Stark sisters but wanted to keep Lisa Tully. I want to ease the relationship with the North but not increase the strength of the North. He did not want to start a war with the North, and wanted to gain the favor of the Stark family through this matter, and then promote the marriage between North and Dorne, thereby fading the connection between Dorne and Targaryen, and also increasing the horse through marriage with North and increasing the horse. The Heir family has the right to speak. I have so many thoughts. I am indeed a very experienced guy, but I won't let Dorne marry Northland. Leonor affirmed Oberon's idea in his heart. But he didn't care. He would never allow the 7 kingdoms to marry privately. All kingdoms must be included in his rule and operated according to his ideas. Brienne, turn around and send an eye to Sansa and Arya. Leonor suddenly remembered and whispered to Brienne, who was guarding the seat. He had never brought Sister Stark before. Use it as a hostage or bargaining chip. Yes, Your Majesty. Brienne, who had already changed into white armor, nodded quickly. Chapter 105. Angry. Leonor whispered to Brienne on the stage, but everyone in the audience still refused to give up. Met stood up and shouted Your Majesty first, then said, Can't let it go, my sir. Let's talk about the Iron Islands. With Theon Greyjoy, we can solve the Iron Islands in a peaceful way. Leonor interrupted Mess's spell casting and went to he mentioned his intention, the way to peace. Mess choked. He remembered that he was still on the issue of the Iron Islands just now. Wait. His Majesty the King wants to solve the Iron Islands in a peaceful way. Of course, Theon Greyjoy is the only son of Baron Greyjoy. As long as Baron Greyjoy dies, he will be the only king of the Iron Islands. Leonor spoke for granted, but Your Majesty, Baron Greyjoy is not dead yet. Mess wanted to remind Leonor that the Iron Islanders would not accept peace. The Greyjoy family's proverbs are strong winds harder than suffering. They advocate plundering. It's okay, he will die soon. Leonor was very confident. Baron Greyjoy was one of the 5 kings who were originally determined to be fate. He would die from the murder of his brothers, and he didn't need to be himself anymore, go to the labor army to fight. But, Met still wanted to defend himself. My sir, what do you want to deal with this matter? Leonor asked Metz about his thoughts so that the Prime Minister would not bend around again. Your Majesty, I ask you to call on the princes to flatten the Iron Islands as if you were conquering the western frontier. Metz directly expressed his thoughts. No money, Leonor gave a straightforward sentence. Didn't you just collect taxes from the church? Mess was unhappy, but he knew that Leonor had just collected a large amount of taxes from the church. Used it? Leonor's face suddenly became smelly. These Tyrells couldn't see that they had money. Knowing how much money their curry had, they wanted to urge themselves to go to war. What they owe them? Used it? Metz's voice increased a few degrees. Where do I have to tell you about money? Leonor was also angry. Tyrell's hand was stretching longer and longer. Margaret was not pregnant yet. If she was pregnant, it would be fine. Is Tyrell's right? He was to be brought down and then protect the young emperor to command the world. Leonor's sudden increase of voice echoed inside the prime minister's tower, causing Mess's arrogance that was originally about to explode. Then he stopped. Oberon, Berliston, other ministers and scribes all shut up and whispered. He didn't dare to show off his anger because they saw Leonor so angry for the first time. Seeing that everyone was not talking, Leonor was still angry and wanted to curse a few words if he wanted to. However, thinking about this occasion, he still gave up and snorted coldly. Continue the meeting. The matter of the Iron Islands was decided, so Theon Greyjoy stayed in King's Landing for the time being and asked him to see me later. As for the Stark sisters, they were never my prisoners or hostages. At any time you can leave. I don't allow any of you to make things difficult for you, but let them give Robb Stark a message, and say, the Duke of Winterfell and the princes of the North are related to the peace of the North, so they are ready for themselves, don't going the wrong path. Next issue, Leonor forced the end of the Iron Islands and the North. There was no sound below. Is there no topic? Leonor asked. There was still no sound. Since there is no topic, let's end today's meeting. Leonor stood up and left with his sleeves, and Brienne and others quickly followed, leaving the Prime Minister's tower. Brienne returned the great sword handing as Leonor asked, and brought a message to the Stark sisters. Leonor felt a little bored. He looked at the situation in the city and wanted to go back to his private residence, to Jingwenjing. Suddenly, a maid with a white skirt, slim figure and beautiful face came over. What's wrong? Leonor recognized the maid as someone around Margaret, thinking she was here to be her lobbyist, and her face was not very good looking. Your Majesty, the Queen asked me to inform you that she had just gone to find Master Paschal. The maid was careful to talk to the king in the face of the bad face. Looking for Paschal? Is there anything wrong with her body? Leonor relieved his face. It turned out that it was not for the Prime Minister's tower. It was right. Margaret shouldn't have known about a meeting in the Prime Minister's tower so soon. Content. Yes, the Queen wanted to vomit this morning. After Sister Lally's reminder, she went to Master Paschal for a checkup. The maid raised her head carefully, looked at the handsome king with black hair and blue eyes, and looked at him. Expression changes. Are you pregnant? Leonor heard vomiting, and suddenly thought of the pregnancy reaction, and thought of the conflict with the Mets just now. He really got whatever he wanted. Speaking of which, his body is normal. It's time to have sex with Margaret for a while. The maid didn't know how to reply. Can't speak. Leonor's voice heavier. Mr. Paschal said it might be. The maid could only reply truthfully, okay, I understand. Leonor thought of the child in Margaret's belly. His face softened a little and nodded slightly. He planned to go and see Margaret first. No matter what, face skills need to be done, and he will talk about it when the child is born. Leonor was just about to change direction, when a young gray-haired man rushed over from the king's hall. He quickly approached Leonor and whispered to him, Your Majesty, the Archbishop and the Archbishop are here. People in the church? Leonor was slightly stunned, and then came over. Those dead monks should have come to discuss matters related to religious examinations and religious taxation with him. Maybe they wanted to ask their subordinates to show mercy. Leonor sneered at the Archbishop and Archbishop, who had not met, but turned his head but said with a kind look to Margaret's maid, Tell the Queen, just say that I care about her body very much, keep her in a good mood, and apologize to her for me, saying that I have something to do here and I will go after I have a job. Yes, the maid nodded repeatedly. Go. I will go over there tonight. Leonor looked up and down at the slender and beautiful maid, and suddenly a smile appeared on her face. Whether Margaret was pregnant or not, she would not be able to sleep tonight. Yes, the maid was embarrassed by Leonor's view, but she did not avoid it. Instead, she turned around intentionally and fiddled with the curves of her waist and hips at Leonor. As the Queen's maid, she had sharing the invisible task of the king's desires, for the Queen can effectively prevent the king's favor from being transferred to other places and not flowing to outsiders' fields. Leonor watched the maid's back curve without looking much, and took back his gaze and walked towards the king's hall. Women are just a seasoning for life. The power of the kingdom is something worth paying attention to. If you have power, what kind of woman does not have it? Chapter 106, Can I offer you a reward? In the king's hall, the empty fireplace was wiped clean, and the fat archbishop was pacing back and forth while the 7 archbishops were watching. He looked up at the 7 old ones who seemed to die at any time. The archbishop wanted to say something, but he didn't know how to speak, so he could only continue to pace until a shout came. The king of the Andals, the Loynists, the ancestors, the rulers of the 7 kingdoms, guarding the entire territory, Leonor Baratheon I arrived, with a reputation of the preparatory guards in white armor. Leonor wore a golden crown and a ribbon, walked into the king's hall with great strides, followed by a series of guards. Your Majesty, the archbishop and the 7 archbishops stood together and bowed to Leonor who was walking in. Leonor raised his hand slightly, and the 8 old men immediately stood up. Your Majesty, today we are here to talk to you about the monk exam and the taxes you stipulated for the 7 gods. What are you talking about with me? Leonor did not step onto the Iron Throne, but stood opposite the 8 old men. Those taxes were not formulated for the 7 gods, but for you. Do monks have no country? God hasn't taught you to be loyal to the country? The 8 bishops were suddenly stopped, or, as long as the monk is responsible to the 7 gods, he can completely ignore the king and completely ignore everything in the country. Leonor's voice became low and oppressive. No, Your Majesty, the doctrine of the 7 gods is definitely not like this. The archbishop quickly waved his hands to reject it. He dared not admit such words. If he admits it, the 7 gods church would have to be eliminated in large quantities. Then what do you want to come to me and say? Leonor's brows were still frowning. My Majesty, we know your difficulties, so why do you treat us like this? The archbishop sighed. When we conquer the western frontier, we should not urge you to pay debts, but that is ultimately the money you owe to the church. And you promised to keep a seat for us in the imperial meeting. I am the king, and I will do my best. Among my 9 ministers in the imperial meeting, there are still positions of law ministers, etiquette ministers and foreign ministers. If the church has a suitable candidate, I can recommend it to me. Leonor suddenly when I think about it, I forgot that the church is also a place with a large number of talents. The church is not a place that specializes in cultivating monks. They will also train some scribes and nuns. These people are proficient in accounting, delivery, comfort and healing skills, and are even better than bachelors at some point. The church also uses it. These people influence the general public and received huge wealth from them. The king cannot collect taxes from everyone, but the monks of the 7 gods can. Really? The archbishop's eyes lit up. He didn't expect there would be any unexpected gains, of course, but I have a requirement, that is, the personnel you send must have corresponding abilities. I don't want idiots who only know how to eat meat and drink alcohol. Leonor did not hide his contempt for the fallen side of the church. Haha, the archbishop could only smile at Leonor. After seeing Leonor for a long time, he could only speak again. My Majesty, we still have some small requests. I hope you can lift the monk in the exam. Your actions are tantamount to limiting our spread of the faith of the 7 gods. I hope that you idiots, the faith of the 7 gods will sooner or later become as smelly as mud. Leonor was not polite. My actions are to help you improve the quality of the monk team. Don't try to negotiate terms with me about this matter, because there is no condition to discuss. Leonor blocked anything the archbishop and others wanted to say. Your Majesty, can't you really talk about it? The archbishop's face turned red with an annoyed tone. Medjol once offered a reward for the armed forces of the church. Do you think I can give you a reward? And how many soldiers will my army be happy to accept such a reward? Leonor's tone was soft, but his words made the 8 church seniors' faces turn white in an instant. Leave. You don't need to take the exam, but it's better to be more obedient, cooperate with all my actions, and send your recommended candidates. You are still the bishop, otherwise you will wait to go to the 7th level of heaven to repent to Heavenly Father. Leonor issued an order to expel guests without hesitation. The 8 church leaders stayed stuck for a long time, but eventually lost all their means and left the king's hall dejectedly. After the 8 bishops left, Theon Greyjoy, who came from the north, was taken into the king's hall and held a pilgrimage to Leonor on the Iron Throne. Theon Greyjoy is a slender, handsome young man with a black hair. He stepped across the shining floor with a novel look and saw more than a dozen white-clothed warriors guarding the throne made of countless iron bars, and the man sitting on it immediately knelt down on one knee. The Andals, The loyalists and the ancestors, the rulers of the 7 kingdoms, guarding the whole territory, respected His Majesty Leonor. I only represent the Duke of Winterfell and the Guardian of the North, Robb Stark. To you pay tribute, please accept my respect, please get up. Theon Greyjoy, I've heard your name, and it seems that Lord Ed Stark taught you well. Leonor stood up from the Iron Throne with a smile, words and tone. My Majesty, I learned a lot from my father. Theon stood up and felt some pressure and became restrained when facing the man from the throne to the front of him. No need to do this, relax. Your adoptive father and I are good brothers. What have you learned from Lord Ed? Leonor patted Theon on the arm and walked outside. Tolerance, honor, and what a noble deserves. Theon felt a little flattered as he grabbed his arm. The king was more approachable than he thought. That's very good. These are what a ruler deserves. You will definitely inherit the Iron Islands in the future. You need to govern the people there. You have not yet contacted them, right? Leonor asked casually with a smile. Yes, but I will rule them. Theon straightened his chest. I believe you will, but your task is a bit heavy. Leonor continued to pat Theon on the shoulder with a smile. Because of my father's rebellion, Theon was a little nervous, but he still took the initiative to talk about this matter. That's secondary. He probably just lost to my brother and your other father. There are always times when I figure it out. I mean the Railway of the Iron Islands. Leonor took the seat. Grateful teachings, railway. Theon was surprised. It seems you don't remember it, right? You were adopted by Lord Ed when you were very young, and probably have never been in contact with a railway. The railways of the Iron Islanders are just robberies, and are the people in the north robbing? My father will not allow it, Theon replied. Chapter 107 Theon Greyjoy. Theon is talking about Ed Stark. The people in the north also have a tradition of looting. Before they were ruled by the 7 kingdoms, they would go south to rob each winter. Every head of Stark's family gave it is his duty to lead the people of the entire northern border through the winter year, and sometimes he will lead the way to rob, but Ed will not do so. This is his nobleness. He never builds his happiness on the pain of others. Leonor nodded in praise of Ed. Your Majesty, I will correct the railway, in the name of my father Ed Stark. Theon saw Leonor's intention and made his own assurance that he would restrain the residents of the Iron Islands. A good noble shouldn't brag, Leonor sneered, making Theon's face turn red when he smiled. Seeing this, he quickly reached out and pulled his arm again. Don't care, you're too full. When it comes to the implementation of railways, you can't stop your people at all, but you will be forced by them. No, I will. Theon was a little stubborn. If this happens, if you don't implement the railway, your people will starve to death. Leonor saw that Theon was dissatisfied, so he assumed a situation for him. Theon was surprised. The Iron Islands, except for iron ore, our salt ore, those things cannot be eaten or drunk. The Iron Islanders do not rob. What should they eat or drink? Leonor pointed out the key points for Theon. Why don't you sell iron and salt? Theon couldn't understand why his tribe members didn't do business. Yes. Why don't you sell iron for salt? But if iron is made into weapons, Leonor smiled. Robbery with weapons is much faster than doing business. What does the Iron Islands call this? Pay iron money. It's really much faster, Theon asked himself. Doing this is not only fast but also simple. After all, selling iron and salt into money also costs money to buy food and clothes, but if you rob, you don't need to worry about so much, you can just take anything over. Paying iron money is much faster than selling salt and iron for money, and then using money to buy clothes and food. Your tribe members have developed a habit. If the railway is stopped, they will have no income, no food, no clothes. What should you do at this time? Leonor asked Theon continuously. Theon couldn't answer. He thought, probably he could only implement railways at this time, so, don't be too full of words. Leonor patted Theon on the shoulder. After all, he was still a young man. Your Majesty, what should you do if it were you? Theon asked with a flash of inspiration. Good question, but you can't do what I can. Leonor shook his index finger at Theon. Why? Theon was dissatisfied. I will use various methods to follow my path, so that the people will walk according to my path, and they will also happily embark on this path, but the nobles will oppose me for this, and then, I will kill them. Can you? Leonor asked at Theon with a smile. Of course. Theon bulged his chest, but he was just killing people, so he could do it himself. Haha. Do you know who to kill? After you kill the nobles, who will you use to replace them? What if the new nobles still oppose you? Leonor spread his hands to Theon and put forward a series of ideas. I can use slave labor. Theon thought of the substitute, but thought that slave laborers might oppose themselves as new nobles, so he said, kill everyone who opposes me, haha. Leonor smiled without saying a word, and did not continue on this topic, but said, your father Baron sent your uncle to snatch Callan Bay. I think your brother is angry, right? My uncle didn't occupy the place for a long time. He took the boat away afterwards. Robb was a little angry and he scolded me. Theon nodded, a little aggrieved. The Leta family cannot defend Callan Bay. What does this have to do with you? Leonor pretended to be a question. He was just a little angry. Sheenan was not sincere. He still cared about Robb's rebuke, but it was useless to mind. After all, young master, I can't do anything to him, Leonor explained to Theon, and said that he was a little angry with Robb, but he couldn't do anything to him. Robert cared about Sansa and Arya very much, otherwise he would have the idea of reproclaiming kingdom and making the North independent. Theon glanced at Leonor, lowered his head slightly, and reminded him with murmurs, the Stark family is very good at this point. They value family relationships very much? You think that's the same? Leonor didn't care about Theon's reminder. Me. Theon pondered a little. He didn't know if the Stark family regarded him as a family member. Ed has read you several times in front of me. Leonor had to patch Ed when he saw Theon looking suspicious. Is that? Theon cheered up. Without saying anything else, Ed's father really cared about him. Of course, he said you were a little proud child, but it was a pity that he could not really enter your heart. You, like Jon, often mind your identity. Leonor casually made up words for Ed, and take out the Stark family's illegitimate son Jon Snow to talk about it. Theon's lips moved, and he didn't say anything, but some tears oozed out of his eyes, and he hurriedly lowered his head. He is a scheming person and doesn't tell outsiders much. Leonor reached out and patted Theon for comfort. My father, where did he go? Theon wiped his eyes and asked Ed's whereabouts. He said he went to Bingley City to meet Robb, and Mrs. Catelyn was with him, and I sent him soldiers, but later the team lost its traces. The last place they appeared was Shitten Town. I heard that the Frey family was there have been stationed there, and the Demon Mountain has also taken the army to the Demon Mountain. Dorne's Sand Snake group has captured Demon Mountain in Deep Cave City. Leonor explained the whole story to Theon. I want to go there and have a look, Theon asked. Go. I have sent back the ice sword to Sansa and Arya. You can go to the ruins of Shitten Town to see. If you find anything, you can tell me if you go back to the north or the Iron Islands. Let's do it yourself, Leonor responded casually. By the way, when you go back to inherit the Iron Islands, you can inherit your father's title. Leonor gave Theon a promise that he could inherit the promise of the King of the Iron Islands. How can this work? This is not in accordance with the rules. Theon was shocked. You should know that Robb is not the King of the North yet, so how could he become a king? The rules are set by people. Please care about what he does. You inherited the King of the Iron Islands. In terms of railways, you can do it yourself. Leonor said nothing, just let Theon take care of it. Your Majesty, please rest assured. If I become the King of the Iron Islands, I will definitely restrain my people and guide them to become an excellent people, Theon quickly promised. Just remember what you said today. Leonor smiled and nodded in permission. Chapter 108, The Destiny. The Iron Islands are a place with rich high-quality iron ore and salt mines, but that place is too remote and it is difficult for people who believe in railways to discipline them. Instead of choosing to rule directly, it is better to adopt a policy of restraint. That is, Greyjoy acts as a gripper to control it indirectly, and then change the soil and return to the flow when the time is right under the policy of restraint. A throne was just a false reputation, and Leonor was willing to let it go, so he coaxed Theon Greyjoy to say a lot. He could see that this guy was not a pure bad guy, just a guy who is very eager to get recognition from others, and occasionally he can't tell his own position, which is very promising. After coaxing Theon Greyjoy for a long time, he moved him to tears. Leonor asked him to live in the Red Fort for some time and promised to tell him a marriage and let him marry a beautiful one. Aristocratic woman Theon Greyjoy cannot say that he has no feelings for his adoptive father Ed Stark. He originally said he wanted to go to Shitten Town to see him, but in front of Leonor's promised throne and noble women, he seemed very moved and finally stayed. Here in Red Fort Leonor did not draw cakes for Theon Greyjoy. After he settled him, he immediately asked someone to find Pycelle and asked him if there were any down-and-out, beautiful and vain nobles in King's Landing. Miss, there are many such ladies, my Majesty, Pacier originally thought that Leonor asked him about Margaret's pregnancy, but he didn't expect it to be this. He was a little confused. He felt that Leonor was not yet the queen's mistress, will look for other women as soon as she becomes pregnant. Find one that is suitable for control, Leonor asked Paciel, as appropriate to control. Paciel was a little surprised. This is not what you should ask. Leonor became stern. He asked Sir to work, not asking him to ask why. Yes, my majesty. Paciel quickly adjusted his mind. Have Margaret confirmed? Leonor asked about his queen. The Virgin Mary has given you blessings. Paciel smiled and congratulated. Very good. Thank you for your care and treatment for Shilin over the past few days. I hope she can get better as soon as possible. Margaret will bother you, and calculate the date of the child's birth. Leonor asked expressionlessly. Yes, in the treatment of grayscale disease, I have improved a lot in those children. Your Majesty, believe me. Paciel did not dare to be careless and nodded repeatedly. Of course I believe in you, Mr. Pacier. Leonor changed into a smile and expressed his closeness by the name he was back then, which made Pacier bend his waist lower and his attitude more humble. The demise of the Lannister family shocked Pacier, and the constant contact made Pacier transfer his fear of Tywin Lannister to Leonor, and his fear doubled. Therefore, I dare not neglect at all. Paciel was very faithful in carrying out Leonor's request, and after many screenings for him, he chose a woman named Lena Badmore. This noble girl has beautiful brown hair and brown pupils, fair skin, looks smart, but she is actually very vain. She has seen Theon's pretty good appearance and is sure to marry him and have the chance to become a queen. After receiving the considerable dowry given by Lyanna, he decisively chose to agree to get married. Leonor held the wedding of Theon Greyjoy and Lena Badmore at Baelor Cathedral. Sansa Stark and Arya Stark, and many King's Landing nobles watched the wedding and gave gifts to the couple. The wedding was hosted by Lyanna himself, and the Archbishop and others had a lot of opinions on this, because Lyanna was not a clergyman, and Theon Greyjoy was not a believer in the Seven Gods. As an Iron Islander, Theon grew up in the north and was a believer of the Old God. According to the canon rules of the Seven Gods Church, it is considered enlightened to not cut off Theon's head directly. How could he tolerate his wedding in the Great Hall of Baelor? The Archbishop and the 7 archbishops had a lot of objections and once refused Theon's wedding with this reason, but the newly appointed law minister, Agshi, did not think so. Monk Agshi gave an example. Aegon I was not a devout believer of the Seven Gods, and his wife Visenya and Rhaenys were not even a believer of the Seven Gods, but the church still blessed the 3 of them for their wedding. Not only gave examples, Monk Agshi also believed that Leonor personally blessed the new people as the representative of the Seven Gods, which was an extremely glorious thing, a sign that the Seven Gods Church was about to prosper, and that the Old God and the Flooded God were about to be a sign of death. Agshi persuaded the Archbishop and the Archbishop, and also persuaded Theon Greyjoy to take the oath to convert to the Seven Gods in the Cathedral of Baelor. The final wedding was successfully completed with Leonor for Theon Greyjoy and Lena Badmore held a wedding and blessed the 2 on behalf of the Seven Gods. It seemed as if the weather was good. On the second day after the wedding, news came from the Iron Islands that Baron Greyjoy, who had become the king of the Iron Islands, fell to death due to a mistake. The Iron Islands are now only left. Theon is an heir. After Leonor got the news, he immediately began to make arrangements, arranging 7 royal guards for Theon Greyjoy, 3 reliable bachelors and housekeepers, and finally 200 fully armed soldiers. Together they sent the ship back to the Iron Islands along with Theon Greyjoy. There are sisters Stark, Sansa and Arya, who will take a boat to the north from King's Landing to White Harbor. So, goodbye. Leonor stood at the dock to see the 2 girls farewell. Thank you for your care during this period. Sansa saluted Leonor with a corner of her skirt. I haven't taken care of you. I'm so busy with my business and I haven't seen you a few times, right? Leonor waved his hand and smiled, teasing Arya next to Sansa. HMPH. Arya snorted coldly and turned her head away, not talking to Leonor. Aelia. Sansa scolded her sister, afraid that Leonor would be angry. Your Majesty, please forgive my sister. Okay, if I get angry, you won't be able to go back to the north. Leonor knew that Sansa had become cautious in King's Landing City, but he didn't expect that it had reached this level now, so he waved his hand casually. Okay, Your Majesty, Arya and I are leaving now. May the gods bless you. Seeing that Leonor didn't care, Sansa breathed a sigh of relief. After saying goodbye, she pulled her sister and wanted to get on. Both suddenly, Arya broke away from her sister's hand, turned her head and said angrily to Leonor, You wait, I will definitely come back. Yes, I welcome you anytime. As long as you don't come back as an enemy. Leonor waved his hand and joked at the little girl who was angry on the surface, but was actually not good at leaving. And then watched her get on board by her sister Sansa. The sailing ship sailed out of Blackwater Bay and headed north. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 109: The Airborne Enemy. The Tao Te Ching says, governing a big country is like cooking small fresh food. Only when the heat comes, the wonderful taste can come out. Rely on the policy of restraining the Iron People of the Iron Islands, attacking the former lords of the western frontier, Stormland and the King's territory, reducing taxes and corvée service, relying on the monopoly of salt and iron to increase the income of the country and the people, constantly accumulating wealth, training the army, and preparing for the last battle with stubborn old forces such as the North Frontier, River Bay, and Dorneland. Completely unifies the entire Westeros continent. When the wheat seedlings were drawn out of the land 3 times and the ears were harvested 3 times. Leonor's plans produced fruitful fruits. His national vault stored the wealth of up to 1,600,000 golden dragons. He trained 30 regiments, with an army of more than 20,000, including 4 cavalry regiments, and more than half were covered with solid iron armor. Wealth and army are ready, and the next thing we are waiting for is war, using iron and fire to smash the old era, and then remelting a throne. Leonor soon waited for the opportunity, but the first move was not the northern border or other territories he had imagined, but the enemy from the opposite sea. Just as Leonor accumulated wealth and army in Westeros, Daenerys, opposite the sea, was not idle either. The mother of dragons, who possessed a series of titles, hatched a dragon with her petrified dragon eggs according to her fate, and used the dragon to liberate Astabo, Yuan-Kay and Miran in Slave Bay. Daenerys brought 8,000 unscrupulous people under the command of Astabo, freed all slaves in Yuan-Kay, and finally conquered Meir, where he swore to be king under the Pyramid of the Harp, began his own rule, and prepared to return to Westeros with her Dothraki roaring warriors, the unsullied army and the dragon. According to the general process of cool riding, Daenerys should be unstoppable and staged a return of the king, but it is gone even without Leonor. Daenerys' own dominance level has reached its peak and can only stagnate in the Slave Bay, exhausting energy from the slave owner who opposed her. Now with Leonor, her dominance is even worse. Stable. The slave owners who were suppressed by Daenerys kept moving in the Slave Bay, and the slaves who obeyed Daenerys also retaliated against their past experiences, and both sides kept murdering. Leonor sent spies to Slave Bay to provide weapons to the slave owners' rebels to help them train their troops, and at the same time, they fanned the evil wind and lighted ghost fires among the slaves who had recovered their freedom, telling them that once the slave owners made a comeback, Daenerys Silk will abandon them and then go. The slaves who had just obtained freedom were unwilling to be slaves again and tried their best to suppress the former slave owner. The 300 ships Daenerys was prepared to cross the sea were burned in an accident, and his plan to return to Westeros was completely shelved. Even with the help of external forces, he would not be able to cross the sea again in the next 3 years. Daenerys was extremely angry at this, but she had no choice but to lock her dragon under the pyramid, execute the slaves who were causing trouble, and then try to seek a way to govern the country. When Daenerys was trapped in the Slave Bay, another descendant of Targaryen who was stranded in Essos hung his flag and crossed the narrow sea to start the war. The war began quietly. The crews flew from the east to the White Sword Tower in King's Landing City in the early morning. After seeing the red ink mud on the crows, the servants in charge of raising crows did not dare to neglect them and immediately sent the letter. Enter the White Sword Tower. After many transmissions, the letter was finally delivered to the Great Knight Ballistan, and then presented to Leonor by Ballistan. Leonor was enjoying breakfast. He was eating boiled eggs and a different version of hula soup made of pepper, meat and wheat flour. He was stunned when he heard Ballistan's report. Army, yes, Your Majesty. The intelligence sent by the 70th Royal Forest Regiment indicated that an unknown army appeared in the Stormland, had occupied the Vulture Nest City, and headed towards the Crow Nest City and the Stone Helmet City, as if they wanted to cut off us from the rainforest. The connection. Can you figure out who that is? Leonor fell into deep thought. Could it be that Daenerys crossed the sea without any effort and landed directly on the stormed ground? There is no news on this at present. I suggest mobilizing the Royal Corps and the Storm Corps to prepare for battle. Ballistan made a suggestion. Of course this is the case. the Royal Forest and Storm Corps are under your own command to find out the identity and strength of the enemy as soon as possible. At the same time, send a crow to Donner, so that he can organize the noble knights of the Storm leaders to gather and prepare for war." Leonor nodded, demanding to find out the enemy situation as soon as possible, and made certain of the generals of the Imperial Corps and the Storm Corps. Yes, Chief Bear Stanton ordered Leonor trained new army, with regiments as the basic unit. The number of people in each regiment is floating around 650 people. It is subject to training organizations for each commander without orders. Non-war period, no mobilization shall be carried out without authorization. Assessment drills are carried out annually and quarterly. At the time of temporary transfer and distribution to the group, the commander shall be appointed temporarily. Currently, Leonor has 30 regiments. In addition to the 3 Iron Guard regiments responsible for the defense of Junlin City, 10 Redwater regiments are stationed in Hongcha River to prevent the princes from heading south from the northern border. 5 Imperial Bridal regiments are stationed in the Imperial Palace. Lin Jisheng supports and protects Junlin City from being threatened by surprise. 7 Sword regiments are stationed in various parts of the western region, and 5 Storm regiments are stationed in Finxi Fort, with the goal of being ready to suppress the lords of the western region and Stormland at any time out of caution in his heart. In order to prevent Daenerys Dragon's attack from a fierce attack, Leonor mobilized the Royal Guard and the Storm Corps at one time and handed over the command to Balliston in order to make sure to figure it out as soon as possible. The enemy's identity is exterminated when Balliston took the order and left. Leonor still felt unsafe, so he turned his head and said to Brienne, "Go and have someone open my number 10 cage?" "Yes." Brienne winked at the guard next to her. The guard immediately took the order and hurriedly left the King's Hall and turned into a remote tower. The remote tower has a huge space, with wire cages inside, with large and small eagles, big dogs and cats, and special servants to take care of them. With the order from the guards, the guard servants opened a cage with a number 10, let the chirping tits fly out, wandered in the sky for 2 circles, and then flew out in the direction of the Royal Forest. In the sea wind, gray-white tits can be seen everywhere. They travel through the forest and fly in the sea breeze. Finally, they stop on the castle in a red reef on the coast. Looking at a tent in the ruins, their little heads shaking, and their eyes are invisible. Light Leonor's consciousness descended into the tit's body. Looking through the tit's eyes, he saw a castle full of tents in various colors appearing in front of him. Vulture Nest Fort. Leonor recognized this castle at a glance, belonging to the Stormland Castle of the Clinton family. Its former owner belonged to John Clinton, the last prince of Targaryen family, and the king of Crazy King Aerys II. Hand. Chapter 110 Promise. As Targaryen's direct lineage, even the nobles of the Stormland, the Clinton family lost their political qualities. After Robert took office, he distributed most of Clinton's land to other knights, allowing them to retain only one castle. They gradually became obscured by everyone. Leonor didn't care much about the past of the Vulture Crown City. He was more concerned about where the current group of troops stationed in Vulture Crown Castle came from, so he just took a look at the castle, and after a brief discernment, he controlled the tits to spread his wings, flew over the top of the castle, intending to look for some signs in the middle of the tent to confirm the identity of the group of people, but he found nothing, and he did not find any signs. The tits hovered in the air, no identity patterns were found, and some pedestrians in the middle of the tent below were not unique. They wore different styles of armor, except for their fierce aura and slightly rigorous battalion area, where the archers and infantry did not disturb each other. No other features were found. Really, I don't talk about the rules at all. Leonor manipulated the tits around, complaining about the incongruence of the army, approaching the castle of the Red Reef, trying to listen to people's conversation, but not yet approaching. He heard the eagle cry. A layer of shadow pounced down in the sky. Before Leonor could react, he felt his soul fall out of the tit's body. When he looked up, he saw a feathered eagle flying with his back to him. Go out, and the tit that he possessed was falling into its right claw. Leonor looked at the eagle without any surprise or joy, and saw that there was a copper hoop tied to its claws. Just as he turned his consciousness, the eagle loosened the tit in its claws and turned his head to look at him. Come over. The sharp eagle eyes were straight and a figure reflected inside, with purple eyes and white hair, and plump and beautiful lips, getting closer and closer, becoming clearer, as if a human was loaded in the body of an eagle. This is the one who changes shape. When Leonor was slightly surprised, the eagle had already pounced in front of him, and then he subconsciously raised his hand and slapped it away. You dare to mess with me, too? Leonor slapped the eagle from the air, and also slapped the consciousness attached to its body. Before the goshawk landed from the sky, the sharp copper whistle came from below, which surprised Leonor slightly. The changeable man was fine, can't stay for a long time. Leonor glanced at the many figures gathered below, and did not dare to stay for a long time. His soul dissipated directly and returned to the body in Genlin City. Who is it? There are even those who change shapes follow. Leonor opened his eyes and became curious about the team in the Vulturecund City. A team with those who change shapes follow is definitely not simple purple eyes and white hair. This is the typical Valyrian look. Go, let someone find Varys for me, and call Vincent over. Leonor looked up and asked Brienne beside him. Yes. After the guards sent by Brienne left, Leonor thought for a long time and had no idea until Vincent came. Your Majesty. Vincent bowed to Leonor. There are troops of unknown origins in the Stormland. Now they are stationed in the Vulturecund City. Send your spy to touch the details, Leonor asked directly. Yes. Vincent didn't dare to neglect and immediately wanted to make arrangements. When Vincent, who was going to arrange the staff, came back, Leonor did not wait for Varys and sent a second group of personnel to find it, but still couldn't find the fat man. What is that guy doing recently? Leonor had a bad idea in his mind and asked Vincent about Varys' recent moves. The last time he appeared was in a brothel in King's Landing 3 days ago. Recently, he has frequently written letters to Pantis, and the content of the letter is unknown. Vincent has been monitoring Varys' situation. Let your spy find him and kill him directly after finding him. Leonor was sure that Varys disappeared at this time, and it is highly likely that he had betrayed the strange army, and it is very likely that it was Dan. Nerys' subordinate, the person who makes the shape change, has some feminine colors, but is not a female. It should not be Daenerys herself. Daenerys herself is a dragon master. I have never heard of it as a shape changer, but the play does not say that she has the shape changer. Those are the subordinates. I didn't expect that guy was so impatient. Was he a broken jar after he felt powerless to rule Slave Bay? But the messenger I sent to Slave Bay did not report that she had signs of crossing the sea. Leonor turned many thoughts in his mind and said to Vincent, send a raven to your messenger in Slave Bay, and ask him to give feedback on the situation there, and also pay attention to the major ports of Essos to see if there are large-scale ship mobilizations in the near future, and who is the one who is taking the boat. Your Majesty, it takes time. Do your best. Leonor sighed. The speed of information transmission in this era is very low, and the crow trained by his bachelor is difficult to connect the two continents. Many information is lagging behind. Perhaps the opposite is really Daenerys. Silk is not sure. If it was Daenerys, I would have to find a way to face the dragon, go to hold a meeting of the Imperial Court, but before the formal meeting begins, let Lord Messa and His Highness Oberyn come to me. Leonor asked Vincent to make arrangements, and then asked Brienne to prepare for the meeting. A moment later, Mess Tyrael and Oberyn Martell came to the King's Hall to meet Leonor. Both of them were quite surprised to hear that an army was landing in the storm and had seized the Vulture's Nest city. Any situation of the enemy is unknown at present, but I have ordered that Barristan lead the Royal Guard and the Storm Court to prepare for battle, and you must be prepared. Leonor did not tell the opposite side that it might be Daenerys. The news told the two that they would only prepare them. Please rest assured, Your Majesty. No matter what his heart was thinking, Messa and Oberyn always spoke in unison to ask him to rest assured. I will be even more worried if I hear you reassure me. Leonor complained in his heart, then pondered for a moment, and said to Mess, speaking of this, Margaret is pregnant, Lord Mays. If she gave birth to a boy this time, then she will be my future heir. This news will not be announced for the time being. You know, Your Highness Oberyn testified. Well, of course. When Messa heard this, his face was stunned at first. He subconsciously wanted to ask something, and almost laughed out loud. In order to cover up, he could only nod when the Tyrion family was in the wedding of the heroes of Caen City. They wanted to get a promise by offering gifts to Dragonstone Island, but they were fooled by Leonor. Now they have got what they want. How could he not laugh? Oberyn glanced at Mess, who was smiling like a fool, and then looked at Leonor, who had no expression on his face, and moved his lips slightly, but said nothing. Because Namilia was also pregnant not long ago. If there is nothing else, then we will go to the Prime Minister's tower to attend the meeting now. After Leonor communicated with the two in advance, he asked the two to attend the imperial meeting of the Prime Minister's tower with himself. Chapter 111, Sit in Charge. After Leonor made peace, He announced the news that an enemy had landed from the storm at the temporary imperial meeting held by the Prime Minister's tower, which aroused the surprise of many ministers and whispered, "Silent!" Brienne pressed her sword and shouted, shaking the noisy sound in the Prime Minister's tower, making everyone's eyes turn to Leonor on the throne, waiting for the black-haired, blue-eyed, golden crown covered with the top of the black-haired, blue-eyed, golden crown. The king gives orders. Dorite, Leonor said, a cry without expression, and Dorite, who was sitting in the last place, quickly stood up and left. From today on, Junlin City will impose a curfew to strictly investigate all people entering and leaving the city to prevent spies from getting into the city. Yes, Dorite quickly responded. Defis, Leonor called out Defis from the next head and told the King's Landing General, "You come to manage the situation in the city, appease the people, and do a good job in logistics. Yes, Agsi, you can cooperate with Davos and let the monks take action." Yes, as ministers were called out one by one, assigned tasks and prepared for a battle. Leonor ended the imperial meeting on the night after the imperial meeting ended. Balliston's subordinate, Bor, arrived and he brought back the latest news from the Imperial Guards. Balliston organized 5 regiments of the Imperial Guards to launch a tentative attack on the enemies of the Vulture Crown Fort, captured some enemies, and found out some news through the communication of the envoys. These enemies did come from the opposite side of the Narrow Sea, and they were departing from the port of Rees. It is a mercenary belonging to the Golden Group. Does the Golden Group that speaks like gold? Who do they serve? Leonor nodded slightly. He had seen those people from the perspective of Tits. They were casual but had a certain discipline. They were indeed the style of mercenaries, but they were affected by who should I hire? I'm sorry, Your Majesty. Bor, wearing white armor, looked ashamed. The mercenaries they captured were too low, and they did not find out who the employer of the Golden Group was during the negotiations. It seems that it has been strictly confidential. If that is the case, then I will destroy these invaders and crush them under our horses' hooves. No matter what they plan, there is no meaning, Leonor Bor told Balliston, but at the end he was afraid that he would urge Balliston to advance and rush, so he said, as long as he can eliminate those invaders, don't be restricted by other things, including my urging, and follow your own pace. I trust you unconditionally. Yes, Bor laid down his head low after hearing Leonor's words. Go. I'm waiting for your good news, and I hope you will be successful and be promoted to the Royal Guard as soon as possible. Leonor stepped forward and helped Bor up in person. In the name of the 7 gods, Your Majesty, I will take down the enemy's head and not let any invaders go. The prepared Royal Guard Bor promised read, I believe in you, go in the name of the 7 gods. Leonor patted Bor on the shoulder with the encouragement of the king. Bor pounded his chest hard, then quickly left, riding a fast horse to bring the news of the king to Balliston. On the side of the imperial forest, Leonor stood at the height of the Red Fort, looking at the white cavalry swept out of the city under the setting sun, and couldn't help feeling a little melancholy. He raised his head to look at the lonely moon in the sky. His thoughts were a little swaying. The royal inner must have played very well. It's a pity that I can no longer lead the army to the war like before. The current situation in Junlin City is very complicated. He must be here and can only be in charge here. If he wasn't here, he would have a big surprise for him without pointing out the Tyrell family. Just as Leonor felt melancholy and lonely, the sound of footsteps came, and Brienne came over to report, Your Majesty, the crews from the Iron Islands are back. Is it Alvin's letter? Leonor turned his head and asked, Yes, but that Theon also wrote you a letter and brought it over together. Brienne nodded and moved aside. A waiter lowered his head and delivered 2 rolls of lacquered sheet paper. Please. Leonor took the parchment scroll and waited for the servant to leave with a flattering smile. He removed the paint seal of the parchment scroll in his hand and spread it out, reading the contents inside. One of the 2 pampered rolls is from Theon, and the other is from Alvin, the guard who escorted him back to the Iron Islands. The content of the letter is similar, and they are all about the experience after Theon returned to the Iron Islands, but the perspective is slightly more focused. Different in the letter, Alvin complained that Theon was arrogant, and he also liked women very much. After returning to the Iron Islands, he started looking for women and completely forgot that his wife Lena, who stayed in King's Landing, had a very good personality. Not to be liked by the Iron Island nobles, his 2 uncles were preparing to convene a meeting to overthrow him, while his sister often played with him. Compared to Alvin's disdain, Theon's words were much more earnest. He explained to Leonor his difficulties in the Iron Islands. He had no money or food, and could not convince the public at all. His uncle Victorian, Aaron, is plotting to overthrow him, and his sister also uses means to play with him. and he feels lonely. What a fool. Leonor looked at Theon's complaining letter and couldn't help but shake his head in his heart, and raise his hand to Brienne. The female guard immediately understood and turned around and went to the house to prepare paper and pen. When Leonor entered the house, the paper and pen on the table were ready, and Brienne moved the butter candle from the corner with the butter candle. Leonor wrote a reply to Theon, telling him not to be discouraged. It is normal to feel lonely as a king, because there is always only one throne of power, but he must learn to find allies for himself. Your sister Asha often plays with you, but she has not publicly opposed you. This is a very suitable potential ally. Send your olive branch to her. If she dislikes you for being weak, you should be strong in time. And she had a heart-to-heart talk, making her feel that you were her relative, and at the same time, she wanted to let her see your value. Promise her you would give her a ship, an army or something else, and she would promise whatever she liked, for your uncles. Instead of letting them conspire secretly, you should pick up this pustule yourself and hold a meeting of kings to choose. Please rest assured, I am your solid backing. I will send someone to transport you food and treasures, and some armies. Please believe me, you will use these armies. In the King's Choice Conference, those who do not obey you appear together, destroy them with force, and tell them with steel and blood who is the king of the Iron Islands. Leonor wrote a letter to Theon with all his feelings. He did not reveal his contempt in the letter at all, but only taught Theon how to weave a conspiracy. After writing this letter, he wrote another letter to Alvin and told the other party. He will send more personnel to ask him to secretly respond, and check the personnel in advance, so as not to leak information. No matter what Theon Greyjoy plans, he plans to stew away the people of the Greyjoy family at the King's Choice Conference. Dealing with the matter of the Iron Islands is also one of the meanings of him staying in King's Landing. Some victory depends on swords and spears, while others rely on paper and pen and crows. Chapter 112. No one is elected. The gloomy sky was cloudless and clear on the mountains covered with weeds. 44 curved gray-white ribs stood in the sky. Among these big trees that were over 100 years thick and taller than the masts of ships, many iron people from large islands gathered together. Today they were choosing. The king came when all the iron people with status gather. The King Selection Association officially begins. This King Selection Association consists of the priest of the God of Desolation, the younger brother of the dead King Baron Greyjoy of the Iron Islands, Ellen Greyjoy of King Baron Greyjoy of the dead King of the Iron Islands. I hosted the priest of the God of God inserted his scimitar with his thick beard and hair covered with seaweed, stood in the middle of Naga's ribs, and gave his comments to everyone, and then began the formal election activities of the King of the Iron Islands in name. Everyone can participate. Everyone can lead 3 assistants to the stage and impress everyone with gifts and speeches. As long as most people on the scene shout out the name of a candidate, that person will be elected. The King Selection Conference will end here. There are not many people participating in the Iron Islands election today, but only Victory Greyjoy, Asha Greyjoy and Theon Greyjoy's family are the main competitor. Victalion and his 3 assistants brought waterfall like gold, silver and gems, which gave him a lot of supporters. Asha Greyjoy could not compete with her uncle. She did not have enough the gift, so he gave an enthusiastic speech on the spot, and also won a lot of cheers. The last one to come on stage was Theon Greyjoy, who, as Ed Stark's adopted son, brought boxes of grain, salt and Junlong delivered a speech that was not inferior to his sister Asha, such as the dead are not dead and the brave are fearless. Unfortunately, as believers of the God of God, the Iron people reacted few times. What a beautiful speech! Victalion leaned on a battle axe and teased his brother Ellen, causing the wet hair, who had always been serious, to curl the corners of his mouth in the crowd. Asha couldn't help but cover her forehead when she saw her brother's performance. This guy regarded the Iron Men as the knights on the mainland. The Iron Men Mo walks the railway and was not indifferent to the Night Men interest on the platform. Theon Greyjoy's face turned red. He looked at the Iron people below who were as if he was looking at a clown, and his heart was very murderous. Just as he was about to send a signal to the crowd, a sound suddenly came from afar. A violent muffled sound. Wow! The red horns with gold made a dull sound. The iron-minded people who were already bored watching the show turned around and saw a team of hundreds of people coming over. The first man in this team with a bird embroidered on his chest was naked, holding a curved horn with the golden dark red horns, and the blue veins on his forehead were blowing hard. In the middle of the team behind him, a man with pale skin, blue lips and a blindfolded left eye strode to lead the team. When the long line drove into the middle of Naga's ribs, a famous servant opened the box in his hand, revealing a full amount of gold treasures. The one-eyed man raised his hand, and the naked man immediately stopped the horn in his hand. He fell down with exhausted look, but the horn he blew was enough to shock all the Iron People. "I am Euron Greyjoy." The man with one-eyed and blue lips introduced himself to all the Iron People regardless of the fallen servants, nor did he care about the changing faces of Victalion and Erlin in the crowd. "You should know me, from Eben to Yaksha, no matter who you are, you will pray when you see my sail." Euron Greyjoy's blue one-eyed chuckled at all the Iron People, but no one dared to do so respond to his gaze. "Euron, you are not qualified to participate in the King's election conference." Victalion raised the axe in his hand and scolded him angrily despite Iron's dissuasion. "Of course I have it, my brother, don't look at me like this. Isn't it just that you slept with a salt concubine? I will give you 10 more, and you, don't you want everyone to have 10 beautiful salts? Is it a concubine?" Yulin pointed at the Iron People at the scene to bewitch him. "Why do you give each of us 10 salt concubines?" Some iron-minded people disdained. "By the dragon, you know me. Everyone knows that I slept with my brother's salt concubine, and was expelled from the Iron Islands by my brother Baron. Over the years, my ships have sailed far and arrived in many of you unexpectedly. Look, this is what I found in the ominous ruins of Valyria." Euron stretched out his hand, and a servant handed the dark red trumpet from the exhausted hand to his hand, allowing him to show it to the Iron People. "There are gold slings on the dark red curved horns that are wandering with countless veins, and are carved with irrecognizable ancient words. This is the horn of the dragon, the horn used by the ancient Valyrians to control the dragon. When I blow this horn, the dragon will crawl at my feet. At that time, the whole Westeros will be mine. I will give each of you 10 salt concubines, so that you can enjoy the robbery of every piece of land you see and play with every beautiful woman." Yullin's words were vulgar, but they were called the iron of the scene. The people's breathing worsened. "There are no dragons in the world," Victalion said. "The dragon has appeared, the descendant of that Targaryen. She has hatched a new dragon, and it is 3. How about it? You all, look, this is my proof to you, this is my gift, follow me. 10 salt concubines, the whole land belongs to us." Euron loudly announced Daenerys' existence to everyone, and at the same time held up the horn of the dragon, pointing at the gold, silver and jewelry he brought. Loudly bewitched, "Euron!" Some teammen shouted out his name. "Euron, Yulin!" The voices of the Iron People gathered together. It was also Jinzi. They were more willing to surrender to Yulin, who owned the dragon. At least they had the chance to conquer the entire continent. "Believe me, you will not be disappointed in your choice, my son." Euron heard his name shouting out from everyone's mouth. His blue lips were so excited that they were tense, but halfway through his words, he choked and looked down and saw a feather arrow shot through his chest. "Kill them, especially Victalion, Elon, Asha, and that Euron." Alvin, wearing white armor, held a big bow in his hand. His voice was cold, and he was by his side, about 100 times. The guards took off their disguise and raised their crossbows in their hands to shoot at the crowd indiscriminately. "Sir, His Highness Theon is still there." Some soldiers hesitated a little, and Theon, whom they supported, was still inside. "Don't worry about him," Alvin gave a decisive order. And another 30 or 40 armored infantry next to him began to run up with their swords and axes, and began to slash and kill the Iron People trying to escape. Blood flowed among the chaotic Iron People. Theon saw Alvin in white in the distance and wanted to shout, "I'm still here," but a feather arrow penetrated directly into his chest and shot him to death. Among the Iron People, let him die. With the Iron People present, no one was elected today in the King election meeting. Chapter 113. The heir cannot be a girl. A shining light flashed by, accurately slashing on the roof of the Red Fort, bringing a burst of fire and lightning to fade away. The thunder sounded afterwards, and rumbling spread from the entire top of Junlin City. Really, Leonor listened to the thunder above his head, and couldn't help but reach out and rub his forehead, firmly squeezing the thunder in his body caused by the throbbing of souls. There are two aspects of his terror. On the one hand, he was shocked by the lightning above his head, and on the other hand, he was, wow. A crisp and loud cry came from the courtyard next door, which made Leonor feel relieved, and he quickly stood up and walked towards the next door. As Leonor stepped into the courtyard gate, he walked out with a swaddled nun, Lally and Pychel. "How is Margaret?" Leonor glanced at the child in Lally's arms, with a smile on his face, and at the same time cared about Margaret in the room to Pychel. This was her second place in her. She and her first child, her daughter Vivian. "His Highness is healthy," Pychel replied to Leonor's condition. "Very good." Leonor took the child from the nun's arms, hugged him and coaxed him a few words, and at the same time he opened the corner of the swaddling cloth and took a look. He felt a little relieved and disappointed. This was still a daughter according to his agreement with Nets. He does not need to make this daughter the crown prince, just call her Arya. Leonor named his second daughter, and then he was about to enter the door to visit Margaret, but before he could enter the door, he heard a call, "Your Majesty." The waiter wearing a feathered wide-brimmed hat hurriedly, holding a roll of parchment sealed from red paint in his hand. The crow from the Iron Islands sent back the message, "Let it go first." Leonor ignored the news, but went in first and visited Margaret, who had just given birth. The room was filled with a smell of fishy smell. Margaret, who had just given birth, was lying on the bed very weakly. After discovering that Leonor came in with the child in, she said up with her hands, "Your Majesty, show it to me, let's take a look at our area." Leonor sent his newborn daughter to Margaret. "She is such a good child. Your Majesty, do you think she will be a good queen in the future?" Margaret read the child and tentatively posed to Leonor. Leonor had a little pity for Margaret, but when he heard her words, the smile on his face faded. "Won't." The sudden stiff tone made Margaret, who was holding the child, stutter slightly. "I will not allow my kingdom to repeat the farce of the blood dragon dance, so I will not allow girls to inherit the throne. I have said this before. I have something to say to your father first, and the boy who gave birth to can only continue crown prince," Leonor explained slowly, "and he spoke very openly because he and Margaret were an already very close couples." "I know." Margaret lowered her head, her face unable to see the joy and anger. "Rest with peace of mind. Master Pychil said that you are in good health." Leonor comforted Margaret. She still had a chance to have a child. "Of course, Your Majesty, I will recover as soon as possible." Margaret raised her head again, with a smile on her face. "Don't force yourself like this. Put your body first. I like it, both men and women." Leonor saw the displeasure under Margaret's smile and advised her not to be too anxious. "Why can't Your Majesty accept a female heir?" Margaret finally couldn't hold back. "The blood dragon dance was just because Viserys I did not directly establish the crown prince, and gave the Green Party and Aegon II a chance. You can convene parliament and nobles and establish it early. If I establish a woman as the heir, then who should she enthrone as the crown prince when she dies? Her child or her nephew?" Leonor interrupted Margaret's idea and asked her a question. "Why is this kind of problem?" Margaret felt it was unreasonable. "Of course it is the legal child of her and her husband. If there is a legal child, the legal child must have the right to inherit it." "No, her nephew will not agree. As a male bloodline, he will think that he is ahead of his inheritance rights, and the nobles with ulterior motives will definitely support him." Leonor shook his head. He wanted to kill all power disputes. "Women will not be established as crown prince unless they are absolutely necessary." "Why are you doing this?" Margaret read the child. His face turned pale with anger. "Okay, no need to say anything. Don't argue with me for any reason unless you ascend the throne." Leonor developed his due decisiveness and did not allow the quarrel to escalate here, which would not help his relationship with Margaret. It's not conducive to her rest, eh? Margaret saw that Leonor had made up his mind and could not argue with him, but could not let him down, so he also asked a question. "If Nemelia gave birth to a boy, what are you going to do if she was going to do it?" The reason why Margaret wanted her daughter to become the crown prince was mainly because Nemelia's pregnancy gave her a crisis. "You are the queen, and the crown prince can only be the queen's child." Leonor gave Margaret the answer he wanted. "Okay, I understand, Your Majesty." Margaret was relieved after hearing Leonor's words. "So, take good care of your health." Leonor promised and advised Margaret to take good care of her health. "Thank you, Your Majesty." Margaret thanked Leonor. Feeling that her previous attitude was too anxious, "I am your husband." Leonor reached out and patted Margaret on the cheek. Of course, Margaret reached out to cover Leonor's palm, feeling the temperature above, and was a little lost for a moment. After a while of warmth, Leonor waited until Margaret fell asleep before leaving the courtyard, and got a crow from the Iron Islands from the servant. After seeing the contents clearly with a candlelight, he couldn't help but smile. "Go and have someone invite Her Highness Lena to meet." Leonor asked the servant to invite Theon's wife Lena Badmore for him. A moment later, Leonor met Theon's legal wife, Lena Badmore, in the king's hall, and informed her with sadness about Theon's death. How could this happen? The beautiful Lena was surprised when she heard the news of her husband's death. She tried to make a sad expression, but because she was too surprised, she couldn't do it at all. This is the custom of the Iron Islands. The Greyjoy family had a fierce internal strife at the king's selection conference. Now the Iron Islands have lost their king. "My Highness," Leonor told Lena about the situation, "Sion shouldn't be the only legal king of the Iron Islands. Leonor was still puzzled. No, the situation is very complicated. Let's take a look first. You have two choices. Leonor didn't want to explain the complex power struggle for Lena. What choice? My Majesty, I don't understand what you said. Lena was very panicked about the Iron Islands. You have two choices. One is that you are directly crowned as Queen of the Iron Islands, and the other is that you and Theon's children ascend to the throne. Leonor asked Lena to make the choice. I don't have a child who is pregnant with Theon. Lena was very panicked. You can have it as long as you need it. Leonor looked expressionless. I chose to be the queen myself. My Majesty, please help me with all my strength. Lena suddenly became enlightened. She understood what Leonor wanted. Instead of letting the false child bear it, she might as well make it herself. A queen, I will do my best to help you, Your Majesty. Lena. Seeing that Lena was enlightened, Leonor was very satisfied and changed his name. Chapter 114. Who is the Golden Group serving? Everything about the Iron Islands has settled. The blood of the Greyjoy family is extinct, and Leonor will detain the remaining Ironmen in the name of Lena I, which is easy for him compared to the raising of hands on the western seas. The war in the east is not so smooth. Leonor gave Balliston the largest force, and Balliston did not let him down and used 10 regiments to block the Golden Group that crossed the sea in the Vulture Nest fort, but it would be very important to further eliminate it. It's difficult. This difficulty lies not only in the tenacious resistance of the Golden Group, but also in the uncooperation of the princes in the Storm. At the beginning of the attack on the Golden Core, Leonor ordered the princes of Stormland to send troops to cooperate. This was the obligation and responsibility of the leaders of Stormland, but there were few responders. Most of the princes looked for various people who wanted to harvest millet and farm. Reasons to refuse to fulfill this obligation. In addition to the Sirmi family in the Harvest Hall, the other nobles in the Stormland not only refused to fulfill their obligations, but also raised the food prices openly and secretly, greatly increasing the difficulty and cost of Leonor's food and arms supply. Fortunately, Davos was Leonor solved the problem with his super high connections. The Onion Knight brought a helping hand to Leonora in the Narrow Sea. The pirates led by Siradosan used ships to supply food to the army of Burliston and cooperated with the King's Landing fleet. The Golden Regiment's troop transport ship was blocked. Your Majesty, there are rumors everywhere outside now. Davos sat at the table with a map, carefully accompanying Leonor, who was playing with a model of the ship. What rumors? Leonor played with the ship model in his hand and replied absent-mindedly. He was thinking about how to quickly annihilate the Golden Group mercenaries in the Vulture Nest fort, and whether to use his soul to fight again. It is rumored outside that the Golden Group serves His Highness Stannis. Davos whispered, don't doubt, the Golden Group cannot surrender to Stannis. Speaking of which, you really don't know where he escaped. Leonor missed his brother a little. Although that guy had a bad temper, he is indeed an expert in naval warfare, and the key is that most of the fleets of Wangling and Stormland were taken away by him, and he didn't know where to take them. I really don't know. Davos's answer was firm. Forget it, I won't force you. I can't be sure who the Golden Group serves, but it's definitely not Stannis. That should be the remnant of Targaryen, but I can't be sure if it's Daenerys. I'm a little unsure if it's Daenerys. I can't say no. Okay, because Varys ran away. The time for the fat man to escape was too coincidental. Leonor told his guest to Davos, apart from Daenerys and Viserys, are there any other blood seeds in Targaryen? Davos was also a little curious. Yes, Leonor nodded affirmatively. Jon Snow of the Stark family, that is Rhaega's child, Rhaega and Lyanna's child, who? Davos showed a slightly surprised expression. There were other bloodlines in the Targaryen family. Targaryen's bloodline back then, Mad King Aerys II had 3 children, the eldest was Rhaega, the second son was Viserys, and the youngest was Daenerys. In addition, they were the 2 of Rhaega and Elia. A child, Rhaeneth and Aegon, who were ordered to be killed in the cradle by Tywin Lannister. And one of his illegitimate children. Leonor counted Targaryen's last descendants with his fingers. Rhaega and his illegitimate child. Davos was so surprised that Rhaega Targaryen, who died at the hands of Robert on the Trident River, had always been famous before the abducting of Lyanna Stark, but he didn't expect to stay. Is it that I left behind with Lyanna? When Davos heard Leonor's calendar, his gossip and thoughts were gone, and he suddenly had a locked object. Actually, if it is a far branch, the Golden Group itself should be considered Targaryen's bloodline. Leonor ignored Davos' gossip, but returned his gaze to the Golden Group. The Targaryen family was one of the 40 Dragon Kings in the ancient fortress of Valyrian. It used blood and fire to be of the same origin as the family motto, and the three-headed fire-breathing dragons with a black background and red patterns as the family emblem. It initiated the conquest since Aegon I the War began and ruled the entire Westeros for more than 280 years. During this nearly 300 years, the Targaryen family has also reproduced many branches, most of which were eliminated in the cruel power struggle, but there are still one or two remnants, such as the Golden Group's Yeohewyn. The Golden Group is a mercenary group established by Yeohewyn, an illegitimate son of Targaryen's illegitimate son. He was the illegitimate son of Aegon IV, the illegitimate son of Targaryen's 11th king, because he supported another illegitimate son brother, heir, to launch a rebellion. Defeated, he took a large number of knights and nobles to leave Westeros, established a mercenary group to survive, dreaming of returning to Westeros one day. The current leader of the Golden Group, Harry Strickland, himself does not have Targaryen's bloodline, but it is difficult to guarantee that he has other Targaryen's bloodlines in his hand. Your Majesty, Davos said softly. I'm listening. Leonor shook his head, threw away his distractions, looked at Davos, waiting for his words. Instead of guessing the Golden Group service members like this, it's better to destroy them directly. Davos made a suggestion. Well said. The question is how to eliminate it. Leonor curled the corner of his mouth. He didn't want to destroy the Golden Group. He felt uncomfortable with such a force to stay close to him, especially now that the nobles in the storm have caused all the storms. Waiting and watching, I heard that your siege in Qing City is very exciting. Davos lowered his head. The main problem of attacking the Golden Governor now is the defense of the Vulture City. It is difficult for Balliston's armies to break through that city, but no matter how strong that city is, it should not be as strong as Qing City. Haha, do you think I don't want to copy the time? Leonor sighed at Davos. There was a prerequisite for breaking the city that time, and he was not a real god. I don't know much. Davos sincerely said that he didn't know the king's difficulties. Forget it, it's not your fault. I think this is the only way to go now. This matter cannot be delayed. Leonor waved his hand, but made up his mind that this matter could not be delayed anymore. The Iron Islands, the dust has settled, so I want to go and see what the Golden Group is. Your Majesty, you? Davos raised his head in surprise. I want to lead the army in person. Do you want to stay in King's Landing? Leonor asked Davos. Your Majesty, you are willing to let me come? Davos was a little angry and was very panicked. You should know that guarding the rear was an extremely important thing. He was once a vassal of Stannis. Don't. Leonor raised his voice. No, Your Majesty, I said, you are my god, the only god. Davos stood up and knelt down directly at Leonor. He was a civilian who grew up in a flea nest, and before that having served Stannis, Leonor had given him his back without reservation. This was trust in him, and he must repay this trust. Okay, I feel your piety. Leonor smiled, reached out to help Davos up, and patted him on the shoulder. He was a person who was employed without doubt, no doubt about him. Davos' character it is no less than Ed, and it has managed Junlin City very well, available and useful. Chapter 115, Rebellion of Togman City. Entrusted is back to Davos intact. Leonor took 3 regiments on duty in King's Landing, allowing Oberon and Metz to be their right-handed hands, and Vincent and others as their followers, and began to storm the next day. The land of the Vulture Nest City is heading forth. Before Leonor marched along the road, he sent messengers to the princes in the storm, asking them to respond along the way and prepare their troops to attack Jicheo City for themselves. He gave the princes of the Stormland a chance, but the princes of the Stormland did not cherish it. When Leonor arrived at Togman City with nearly 2,000 people from 3 regiments, he was directly rejected by the Buckles family. The Knights Guard in the city prohibited his army from entering the city, and even directly cursed on the walls, the king who eats shit, the army who eats shit, don't want to enter the land of the Buckles family. You are not welcome here, just go and eat rice somewhere else. This foul language was fed back by soldiers to the central army where Leonor was located, causing a fierce reaction. Your Majesty, kill and pull out all their tongues. Mess was wearing rose-red golden armor and green gold-edged ribbons. He was so angry that his face turned red when he was told by the Buckles family, as if he had received it. Insulted, shouting loudly to enter the city to take revenge, let all troops continue to march towards the direction of the Vulture City. Leonor gave the order with a blue face. Your Majesty, let it go. Mess couldn't believe it. It's obvious that the Buckles family is intentionally dragging us here. What makes them have the courage to do this? Ober ethically analyzed the status quo and told Metz why he did this. No matter what gives them courage, they will never let us march at the Vulture City like this. Your Highness, You will take the 30 Regiment to protect our retreat so that Lord Mess and I can successfully arrive at the Vulture city. Leonor arranged for Oberyn to lead half of his army to guard the rear. He wanted to see if the Buckler family in Tongmund could still be so rampant when he broke the Vulture Nest city. Okay, Oberyn responded, Father, thank you for your maintenance. Don't worry, I will definitely make the Buckles family pay the price when they break through the Vulture Nest city. Leonor did not forget to appease Messa. Of course. Mess heard Leonor's father and smirked, not saying anything against him. Oberyn next to him looked at Leonor, then looked at Mess who was just smirking, not knowing what to say for a moment. This father-in-law and son-in-law, one doesn't know what the shame is, the other is a completely fool, and he is also a fool who is very easy to coax. Without further ado, after assigning the mission, Oberyn personally led his team to stay, while Leonor and Metz rushed to the city of Vultures with 2 regiments after a night of rushing. Leonor arrived at the Red Coral Coast near the Vulture Nest city at noon the next day. When he arrived in the army, Balliston was not here. The left-behind Barry Dondarrion reported that the knights had led the army to provoke the enemy. I went to play the knights and went to fight alone, and the old man is really tough. Leonor sighed. Balliston was also an honest man. If it were him, he would have sieged the city, surrendered, attacked with all kinds of tricks. In short, he would not play such a fight, and he would have to fight alone. This would be a breath of the enemy. Opportunity next time. Balliston cannot be allowed to command the army again. His thinking is still the same as the noble's conservative style, which is not suitable for the new war situation at all. Let's go and have a look. Leonor Balliston had no choice but to take his army to the city of Vulture. When Leonor came to the Red Eagle Nest city, which was like Red Fort, he was ready for a full-scale war. Huge ditches were dug under the city walls, and wooden stakes were inserted diagonally on the ground. Reject horses. Although the scene was very grand, the soldiers on both sides were watching the show at this moment. In the middle of the battlefield, in front of the gate of the Jicheo city, the army on both sides, 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside, were watching, covered in white armor. Balliston is fighting against his opponent. When Leonor arrived, the battle on the field had entered a white-hot stage. Balliston killed his opponent's horse and was also lifted off the war horse. Both sides raised their swords to chop each other, and the sound of the swords intercepted the battlefield. Balliston was old, but his martial arts were still fierce. He knocked away the opponent's helmet with his sword during the battle, making his opponent's red hair fly. John, give up, Balliston shouted as the opponent of Balliston. He is also an old man, with red hair all over his head, but his physique is equally strong. Faced with Balliston's surrender, he raised his sword and yelled, "This is impossible, Balliston, I'm different from a guy like you. Who is this?" Leonor looked at the old man with the gray hair and asked Barry next to him. Hearing the meaning of the conversation, he seemed to be an acquaintance with Mr. Balliston. The great knight said his name is John Clinton. Barry held his helmet and answered Leonor's question with a somewhat restrained expression. John Clinton, the king's hand of heiress II. Leonor was a little surprised. This man had a reputation back then. He was the king's hand after Irving Merriwees. Later, because he was dismissed by heiress II because of his poor combat, yes, it is said that he went into exile after being dismissed by heiress II and died there directly. Now it seems that this is just a rumor. Barry nodded. Vincent, can you find out the news about this person? Leonor turned around and asked his breast brother. No, Your Majesty. Vincent shook his head directly. His energy is mainly focused on the royal court's parliamentary ministers. Such a guy who is old and old does not have enough time to collect information at the moment. Forget it. Leonor also knew that Vincent was not a Dorieman and could not respond to it all, especially intelligence, which is very important to accumulate. So he turned to the guard next to him and said, "Take me aside." The royal flag was raised. A moment later, the yellow flag of the crowned stag rose from the army, causing an uproar on the entire battlefield. In the middle of the battlefield, the fighting Balliston separated from John Clinton. When he turned around and saw the yellow flag rising, he sighed in his heart, turned his head to John Clinton and said, "John, surrender. Our king is here." "That's just a usurper. The king I'm loyal to is Targaryen." John Clinton gasped. But what did the Targaryen kings do? They were obsessed with wildfires and dragons. Look, John, His Majesty Leano has brought hope to the people of Westeros. He is a good king, unlike Robert, and from Aerys's good king. Balliston was heartbroken. Good king? Humph, in the hearts of all kings and nobles, the common people are just tools to speak. John Clinton breathed smoothly. The same is true for His Highness Riga, Balliston asked. Shut up your stinky mouth, I don't allow you, the betrayer, to mention his name. John Clinton was instantly angry and attacked with his sword again. Isn't that true? Balliston asked back with a move. No, His Highness Riga is not. John Clinton let out a louder voice, and the greatsword in his hand slashed wildly click. With a crisp sound, the sword broke. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 116 Aegon VI. During the fierce battle, John Clinton's great sword slashed on Balliston's sword and was directly cut off. You lost? Balliston supported the attack, and after giving John a sentence, he punched the gray-haired old man with a backhand and threw himself down. Tell me who you and the Golden Group are allegiance. Balliston pressed John's throat with his sword and forced him to tell the person behind the Golden Group. Kill me. John Clinton's lips were broken by Balliston, and he spat out a mouthful of bloody saliva, and let Balliston hit him with a stern voice. The sound of horse hooves is getting closer and closer. Balliston looked up and saw dozens of knights galloping from the army opposite, but he was not panicked, because behind him, there was also a crown and dozens of the famous knights arrived. Teacher, thank you for your hard work. Leonor came to the horse with a mace. He looked at the dozens of military cavalry opposite him and waved his hand to let several guards come forward to control the struggling John. For Balliston. Ask Balliston about the situation. Balliston didn't say anything, but just waved his hand with the breath. He was not young anymore and his physical strength was not as strong as before. Opposite to Balliston, dozens of cavalrymen held the reins of the horse and did not launch an attack on Leonor. A 16 or 17-year-old boy stepped forward to negotiate. Don't hurt my teacher, we're willing to pay the ransom. Leonor looked at the boy on the opposite side carefully and saw his black armor and gold edges, a bright red cloak surrounded by his blue hair. Under his blue hair was a feminine face, and some purple light shone out from his black eyes. Leave your name, Brienne shouted loudly. You can call me Little Griffin. John Clinton is my teacher, he is the noble of Westeros, and according to the rules, we can redeem him, the blue-haired boy replied, citing that the nobles can redeem themselves and avoid death. The law of who are you and the Golden Group loyal to? What is his name and where is it from? Answer these questions, you can take your teacher away for free. Leonor did not reject the blue-haired boy's words, but the ransom he asked for was special. We are loyal to Aegon VI. He is the son of Riga and Ilya, the legal heir to the Iron Throne, the blue-haired boy responded with ease. These words caused John Clinton struggle, but he heard that after finishing the boy's words, he slowly calmed down again, which was very strange. Aegon VI, isn't this Jon Snow's real name? Leonor was a little confused. Could that guy escaped from the Night Watcher, but he didn't hear the news? Wait a minute, he is talking about Riga and Ilya's child Aegon VI. Jon Snow should be the child of Riga and Lyanna. He and Ilya's child were not killed by Demon Mountain. Is it right, Your Majesty? Seeing Leonor fail silent, Balliston couldn't help but urge him. Sorry, teacher, I'll deal with your captive. Leonor came to his senses and knew that it was not the right time to think about this, so he apologized to Balliston first, then waved to the guards. Let him go. Bound by the guards, John Clinton suddenly gained freedom and quickly stepped forward to meet with little Jerry, who was dismounted. Boy, take your teacher away, and then escape as far as possible. The farther the better. Leonor watched Jon reunited with a dismounted little Griffin, and persuaded the two to leave. Thank you, Your Generous Majesty. Little Griffin confirmed that his mentor was fine, turned his head and nodded to Leonor, and he still wanted to say something, but was interrupted. Next, I will not accept any of you surrender or redeem. You only have two ways. One is to surrender directly and unconditionally, waiting for my defeat. I may be able to spare your life, and maybe execute you. The other is to be we will execute it directly. Leonor ignored the blue-haired boy's gratitude and his face was gloomy. Thank you for your generous advice. The blue-haired boy was not inspired by Leonor's words, but still thanked him politely, and then took his teacher to retreat to the city of Jinang. Listen to all the people in the Golden Group. Those who surrender will be exempted from the death penalty. If they do not surrender, they will be executed immediately. Leonor took advantage of the dozens of blue-haired boys' riders turning around and leaving, and then declared his order to surrender to them after dozens of cavalry left without saying a word. Leonor also turned around and took Balliston and others back to the camp. convened the generals of the camp, asked about the weapons and food, and arranged combat tasks and combat rewards. From now on, first attack into the city of Jian, bounty 1,000 dragons, and give 300 households to the fief. Those who cut off the golden flag will bounty 1,000 dragons, and give 300 households to the fief. Those who kill the golden group leader, Holly Strickron. Bounty of 800 dragons and granted 200 households to beef. Aegon 6 was killed. Bounty of 600 dragons and granted 200 households to Bet. The various rewards were not only informed by Leonor, but also publicly announced by the guards in the camp. After a moment of effort, the entire military camp began when he became restless. Every soldier began to sharpen his sword. This is true for the army. Only rewards and punishments. When Leonor conquered the Western Front, the oath he declared did not expire at all. Even the 1,000 soldiers who followed him into the Western Front did not grab any major heads. Each person still received subsidies and rewards, many of which were there are more than a dozen golden dragons, as well as a few golden dragons. The other soldiers who stayed behind also get money according to their level just for this war. Even if he did not bear the military expenses of other princes, he would still send hundreds of thousands of golden dragons in vain. However, the advantage of this is that he gathered the morale of the army. He showed everyone his credit, and the soldiers who received the money did not believe him, so when they heard him give him a formal pre-reward, the soldiers also began to scream. Originally, Leonor decided to start the next day, but the howling soldiers could not wait. They prepared at night and lit a torch, but they were worried that they would not dare to fight. Officers at all levels came to Leonor's tent to ask for their orders. Attack. Since that's the case, then fight directly. Leonor saw that the morale of the army was available, and he had no objection. What he wanted now was a quick battle and a quick decision. As the orders came down layer by layer, countless fires lit up in the night. Soldiers wearing swords and armor carried long ladders and ropes on their shoulders, called each other to join in, crossed a moat directly, and then went to the vulture nest in the dark night. The city defenders launched an attack. The Golden Group in the Vulture Nest City is a mercenary. Although it has certain military disciplines, it is extremely dispersed. Especially in the past few days of watching Barlistan and John Clinton compete against each other, everyone was not concerned and secretly played. At this moment, Leonor's army rushed across the moat, and they all had no time to react. The shouting army captured the city gate with just one wave of attack and climbed up the city wall. A squadron leader of the 32nd Royal Bride Regiment named Ackley won the first prize of entering the city. In the name of His Majesty Leonor, Ackley, the captain of the 32nd Battalion of the Royal Bridal, received the merit of entering the city, bounty of 1,000 dragons, and granted 300 fiefs. The front line was riding the horse, and the song title rewards stimulated more soldiers to start yelling. Every 200 people were in one echelon after another, attacking Jiachao City like a tide. Chapter 117. The Truth. The soldiers' enthusiasm for making achievements is far greater than purple thunder, gunpowder and wildfire, helping Leonor to open the Eagle Nest City without any effort. When the sun rises, the golden-crowned stag flag is already erected on the top of the city of Vulture Nest City, and countless soldiers are still attacking the city one after another. The bodies of the mercenaries of the Golden Group were spread layer after layer in the city. When the sun rose to the sky, only the main fort in the entire city was still in the hands of the Golden Group. When the sun was slightly slanted down, the signs of several gilded skulls fell, and the helpless cry of war elephant spread throughout the city, and the golden ball shouting "Gold is above, cold iron is below" had completely disappeared. Harry Strill, the leader of the Golden Genocide, was captured by Storm 23rd Regiment and sent to Leonor along with the Golden Genocide's golden skeleton. Is this the previous leader of the Golden Group? Leonor looked at more than a dozen gilded skulls that were tied together like gourds. With an interesting expression, the Golden Group was formed by the illegitimate sons of the Targaryen family. In order to ensure the cohesion of the mercenary group, each of them had a tradition, which was to cut off their heads after death, boil them in a pot to remove the skin and finally plate them. The gold is hung up as a symbol of the mercenary group, and now it has accumulated as many as 12. Your Majesty, Barlistan looked at the gilded skull with a disgusting expression. Let them all be buried in peace. Anyway, they are back to their hometown. Leonor saw Barlistan's expression and waved his hand, asking the guards to take down the golden heads like gourds and bury them. Tell me, where is Aegon VI? Leonor asked someone to deal with the golden ball sign and walked to a man kneeling in the hall. The man was wearing black blood-stained armor, with Hubai's beard, and was trembling all over. He looked up at the king of King Lyncheng, with black hair and blue eyes and black armor, and took a breath. I asked for a redeem myself, I said that you have no right to atonement after yesterday, but I will give you a chance to answer my questions, and I will give you a chance to atone for your sins." Leonor spoke indifferently. "Aegon VI is Griffin, a little boy, who is Rhaega's child. Varys exchanged him for the farmer's child and asked John Clinton to raise him." Harry Strickland softened directly to the ground. "Explain everything." "So that's how it is." Leonor understood suddenly, and the blue-haired boy flashed in his head. No wonder he had that kind of demeanor. No wonder Varys escaped after the Golden Group landed. It was really good means. "Tell me, how do you contact the princes of the Stormland? Which princes have surrendered to you?" Leonor asked another question. "Tyrion Lannister, in the name of Stannis, talked with the princes of the Stormland and achieved their surrender. Stannis and Aegon VI joined forces." Leonor was puzzled. "Tyrion actually defected to Stannis. Is it true?" "No, that little demon just borrowed Stannis' name." The princes of the Stormland did not know the existence of Aegon VI. They only thought they were serving Baratheon. "Then do you know where Stannis is?" Leonor was slightly surprised and asked with a tentative question. "He was hiding in Pantis with his fleet and was trying to contact the Iron Vault. But the messengers of the Iron Vault were unwilling to pay attention to him. He only had a fleet, no gold. Where does Aegon VI know now?" Leonor was amused by his brother's experience and asked about a blue-haired boy for a while. "Escape. He fled in a boat with John Clinton last night and fled back to Essos. We still have some soldiers there." Harry Strickland mentioned something, hoping for "I'll get my life." The last question, "How do you plan to redeem your life?" Leonor became expressionless. "I am willing to spend money. I have a sum of money in the Iron Gold warehouse, and I have 60,000 gold marks. If I change it to the Golden Dragon, I should have 20,000 yuan. I can withdraw it with a key. I am willing to spend 10,000 yuan to buy myself back." Harry Strickland's face was ashamed. "After returning to Ursus, find someone to send the money, and then tell the public that you escaped by yourself." Leonor waved. Thank you, Your Majesty." Leonor. Harry Strickland's face finally recovered a little bit of anger, and he kowtowed to Leonor repeatedly, and was pulled down by the guards during the thanks. "Your Majesty, you shouldn't let him go like this." Balliston watched Harry Strickland be pulled away, with a look of contempt on his face. "Why? Killing him is useless. Keeping him may also cause some trouble for Aegon VI." Leonor refused. "I don't think as thoughtful as you, but I don't think a person like him deserves to live in the world." Balliston first admitted his mistake, but still expressed his contempt for that guy. "Is there anything worth it or not? The more enemies he has, the better." "Forget it." Leonor smiled and waved his hand. Balliston was still a bit old-fashioned. "Okay." Seeing that Leonor could not convince him, Balliston had to give up. "By the way, teacher, after you go back this time, you can start writing the rules of the knights." Leonor found something for Balliston. He was not going to let Balliston lead the troops again. He was too old-fashioned. Suitable for the new war situation. "Yes, Your Majesty, please allow me to resign from the positions of Captain of the Imperial Guard and the Great Knight. I only want to retain the Imperial Guard's identity, because from ancient times to the present, no living Imperial Guard has voluntarily given up his identity." Balliston's face was gloomy. He knew that writing the rules of the knights was a name, but in fact he retired. "You can keep the big knight too." Leonor tolerated Balliston's resignation. He could not find someone with prestige enough to lead the entire army and loyal enough to lead the army. "Yes." Balliston breathed a sigh of relief, but was a little ashamed, because there were few royal guards who retired like him, and most of them died in battle on missions, just like Alex Ockard. "My teacher, don't do this. I'll look forward to your knight rules to add glory to our kingdom and set another benchmark for the new knights." Leonor couldn't help but comfort him when he saw Balliston's sad look. "Yes, my Majesty, please feel free to hand over this matter to me. Although I can't beat this old bone, I can still do a lot." Balliston said again, "This is right. This is my teacher, the fearless Balliston." There are many people who are not afraid of swords, but there are few people who are not afraid of death and aging, and always maintain fighting spirit. You are undoubtedly such a person. Leon notching's sincere praise made Balliston's mouth unable to help but curl up. And his already rosy face turned even more red. "Are you embarrassed?" Leonor couldn't help but say a hint, then laughed. Chapter 118 The Attitude of the Princes. Interrogate prisoners, count spoils, check combat achievements, and distribute rewards. It only took 1 day and 1 night to capture the city of Nest, but it took 3 days to finish after the war. After finishing the finale, Leonor had time to sit down and discuss with Oberon, Metz, Burliston, Vincent, and Donald Noy, who came later on the next battle. It is not enough to capture the Vulture Nest City. According to Harry Strickland's explanation, the Princes of the Storm were smuggled by the little demons with Stannis's banner. Leonor didn't know what Stannis would look like when he heard this, but the Princes in the Storm did not expect him to rebel. His goal was to establish a centralized kingdom, and he had always formulated policies according to this center to suppress them. It will be a matter of time before the princes of all over the world confront each other. However, I didn't expect that the Storm Princes, who have been ruled by the Baratheon family for generations, were the first to jump out. Let's talk about it. Leonor sat upright with his hands on his knees, allowing everyone to speak freely. Your Majesty, what's there to say? The Princes of the Stormland tried to rebel. The Buckler family of Togman City insulted you in public. According to the law, they should be cut off their heads one by one and inserted them directly into the long head of the Red Fort City. The spear was shown on the public. Metz shouted directly, what else is there to talk about, Mr. Mess? Leonor rolled his eyes in his heart, but his face was smiling and pressed slightly, asking Mess not to worry and not to be impatient. First, Your Majesty, I agree with Lord Mess' words. Oberon stood up and agreed with Mess in rare circumstances. Master Burliston, Vincent, and Honor, let me tell you your opinions. Leonor nodded to Oberon, then looked at the other attendees. Your Majesty, there is a reason for the Princes of the Stormland to do this. Burliston glanced at Messa and Oberon and spoke sincerely. Very good, teacher, please continue. Leonor nodded quickly. For the Princes of Stormland, you are the king. Although you also serve as the Duke of Fengxi Castle, in the eyes of the princes, you will pay more attention to the king's leadership and your foundation as a king, rather than the Duke of Storm Castle and the interests of the princes in the Stormland. Burliston spoke out. I did have some negligence. It can be said that the Princes of the Stormland opposed me because they did not trust me, right? Leonor nodded and admitted, that's right. Burliston nodded repeatedly, which was exactly what he was going to say. You're saying it makes sense. Do you have any other opinions? Leonor looked at the others. I agree with Lord Burliston. Donner Noy nodded in agreement with Burliston's opinion, and Vincent, who was standing in front of him, nodded. Since everyone thinks this matter makes sense, then start from this point of view and find a solution. Leonor was not happy and angry, and asked everyone to solve the problem from this root problem. All of the people present looked at each other, and they didn't know what Leonor meant. Your Majesty, in my opinion, the princes lack a true leader. Since they hope, I will give them a Duke of Fengxi Castle. What do you think? Mess had a sudden idea and smiled and proposed to Leonor to the list with a smile. Our Majesty does not have a suitable relative to take on this important task. Oberon frowned slightly. Not very satisfied with Mess' words, the Duke may not have one, but the Duke, His Highness Vivian and his newly born heir can take on this important task. Mess directly made a suggestion to let Margaret's children Vivian and Arya come. Inheriting Fengxi Castle, the two high men are still too young. A baron was not very satisfied. It is precisely because of the smallness that the Princes of the Stormland can trust them. Mess quickly explained, what do you mean is to forgive the insults of the Storm Princes, including the Copper Gate City? Oberon raised his eyebrows slightly and asked a sharp question. This, Mess' expression suddenly stopped. He fought for benefits for his granddaughter and future grandson, but he couldn't help making a decision on this matter. According to Lord Mess, Vivian was appointed as the Duke of Winch Castle. Considering that she is still young, she is not yet Finch Castle, and the governor of Winch Castle is still the same as Donner. Leonor expressed his expressionless face. Issued my own will, Your Majesty, your greatness is unmatched. Seeing that his intention was achieved, Messa couldn't help but smile with satisfaction and complimented Leonor. Next, the princes of Fengxi Castle were sent to the princes, asking them to visit Fengxi Castle on time to meet their duchess, and to state their actions during the invasion of the Golden Group. Except for the Copper Gate City, the Buckles family the night insulted the king and colluded with the remnants of Lannister. His crimes were unforgivable. All the people in the family were executed. All the walls of the Togman City were demolished, and all the territory was taken over by Fengxi Castle. Leonor issued his own disposal. Do you have any objections? Leonor asked everyone about his opinion. Your Majesty is kind. There is no better adjective for Leonor's way of disposing of it except kindness. There is no objection. So let's implement it accordingly. Leonor waved his hand directly, leaving only many ministers talking. Donner, who had changed into luxurious silk clothes, ignored the others, carefully approached Vincent, and asked the invisible prince, Your Majesty doesn't seem to be very satisfied. I don't know. Vincent shook his head directly, and he couldn't figure out what the king's brother was thinking. Is your highness Vivian easy to get along with? Donner asked another question. Although he is now the governor, he will still give up his seat in the future and serve Vivian by the heir to Fancy Castle designated by Leonor Baratheon. Your highness is only 1 year old and 2 months. Vincent rolled his eyes. Is it too early for this blacksmith to please the future Fengjian now? Then I need to prepare some gifts. Donner ignored Vincent's thoughts and just planned to please the future Fengjian, not to mention the discussions of everyone here. Leonor walked out of the camp, but he was slightly yelled in his heart. His meeting today was purely a test, and it seemed very obvious that everyone's mind was still in the feudal system. Everyone thinks that he will definitely share his territory with his children in the future, and no one wants to rely on the unification. This is good news, which means that the princes have not discovered his idea of unification, and he can continue to paralyze the princes and accumulate the power of unification. This is also bad news, because no one is close to his mind. And his future path to unifying Westeros will be full of difficulties, and relatives may turn against each other. Since that's the case, then come on. There are still White Horse Alliance and Seven Kingdoms Rebellion in the Western Han Dynasty. I want to see who can laugh to the end. Leonor looked up at the sky. Chapter 119 Military Conference. The battle to capture Jichao City was extremely smooth. Leonor recognized a reality from this battle. His army was mature. He now has more than 20,000 strong and fearless soldiers, but he still lacked the ability to command these. The general of the soldier, especially a general who can command the entire army. This is probably the so-called truth that 1,000 troops are easy to obtain, but one general is hard to find. Out of demand for generals, Leonor held another military meeting to allow all regiment-level officers to attend. More than 30 senior officers including Barry Dondarrion and Sando Gerald were crowded in a clearing, waiting for Leonor's meeting content. Listen to all of you. Next, the battle against Tongman City will be handed over to one of you to command. Lord Berliston and I will go to Fancy Castle to wait for your good news. Leonor first. A piece of news was announced to everyone that he would not participate in the battle against Tongman City, and the battle would be handed over to the command of an officer at the scene. Wow! When all the officers heard His Majesty's announcement, they immediately became uproar. Those who were interested in and had guessed a meaning. Whoever could command this battle and perform well would definitely be appreciated by His Majesty the King and thus change their destiny. Your Majesty, who will be given to the command of this battle? Someone who couldn't wait to ask. Good question. This is also my goal to call you over. Now, let me first state my expectations for this battle to you. Leonor sat tiltedly on his body, holding his knees with one hand, with some ruffianity in his eyes. Looking at the officers who were looking forward to it, I want the lives of all the Breck family members. I will remove the walls of the Tongman City. To the civilians of the Tongman City, try not to harm them. But if I die loyal to Breck, there is no need to pity them. For the K family, I said my request. Now, tell me, how can you fulfill this request? Leonor spread his hands to all the officers, like an examiner who posted the test questions. Your Majesty, please allow me to speak. An officer wearing black armor and with thick beard stood up. Report your title. Leonor looked at the officer in black armor and asked him to report his name first. Dear Your Majesty, I am Jiro from the 32nd Royal Line Regiment. I am a civilian. If you hand over this task to me, I will complete it with courage and force, just like the first one of our regiments rushed in. Like the Eagle Nest City, Jado, with a strong beard, knelt on one knee. Is there any more? Leonor asked. Jado's expression was slightly dumbfounded. He could not imagine what war needs besides courage and force. Okay, your answer is pretty good, but it's not enough. Sit back. Leonor reached out and pressed the leader of the 32nd Regiment. Jado had a disappointed expression and could only get up and sit back to his seat. Next, Leonor spoke and looked at everyone. Your Majesty, I am Grossi Bear of the Storm 71st Regiment, and the second son of the Bear family who lived in the homes of the King's South for generations. A white-faced officer wearing silver armor stood up. First of all, Bin Yali introduced himself, and then continued to speak after getting permission. If Your Majesty is willing to hand over the command to me, I hope to get the dominance of the 5 regiments of the Stormland in a cavalry regiment. I will use the etiquette of the nobles. Come and carry out this battle. I will send letters to the Copper Gate City, declare real war on the Breck family, and let their troops go out of the city to have a dignified showdown with me until one side dies. It was indeed a normal aristocratic warfare. Leonor nodded in his heart. Although he was fighting a warfare, he was much better than Jiro, a civilian. At least he mentioned that he needed cavalry and specific forces, and he knew that he wanted to turn Bull. The K family fished out of the city so that they could play their advantages in military strength in field battles. Next, Leonor did not appreciate Grassi, because he was not surprised by the education he had received to say these things. He reached out and pressed Grassi and let the next officer speak next. The officers stood up and spoke. They mentioned many methods, including how many troops and branches they need. Some of them need military rations, some of them need siege equipment, and some of them proposed psychological warfare. I promised to forgive the Western Knights, and to instigate the people, soldiers and knights of the Togman city at the beginning. Many officers who spoke first were still a little disappointed and felt that they had lost the election. However, as the meeting progressed, one colleague after another stood up to speak, and they couldn't help but fall into deep thoughts and began to think about what else they could think about. Completion is made after most officers made speeches. The preparatory guard, who acted as the messenger of Burliston, stood up and asked Leonor, "Your Majesty, please allow me to speak. Tell me." Leonor stretched out a hand and made a casual position. "Please give me the command of this battle." Bor spoke firmly. "How do you meet my request? I want 40,000 golden dragons, and there are 3,000 fiefs of the reward advances, and 3 regiments of infantry, 1 regiment of cavalry, and the food and grass to support these troops marching." Bor stroked his right hand and said, "First, deliver your own needs. When you agree to give me these troops and needs, I will send my 3 regiments of infantry to set out first, and challenge the Brink family in the city of Togman, and publicize your execution to them, and the cavalry will hide the custody." "What will happen then?" Leonor nodded slightly. "The Breck family would be desperate at that time. After despair, they would do everything they could to resist. When they found out that we were short of cavalry, they would send cavalry without hesitation and try to disperse us with cavalry. They would definitely do that, because they are nobles." Knights Pole pointed out the honor that nobles value. "As long as they attack, my infantry will entangle them, and then let the cavalry bit them and chase them into the city of Togman. They also have the possibility of not attacking, and the battle will be in a stalemate, but I will do my best to provoke them. If I cannot, I will release news to the city, forgive some of the knights and soldiers of the Togman city, and even persuade the people to tell them that they can be distributed to the land and to instigate them to open the city gate." Opening the gate of the Togman city is an important node. Once the gate is opened, our army will be able to drive straight in. At that time, I will use the rewards you prepay to inspire the soldiers to fight, so that they can use swords to let the traitors know that they are betrayed. Cost. What do you think? Leonor looked at Mess, a baron, Balliston and others attending the meeting. "Your Majesty, you'll decide." Mess tried his best to keep himself from sleeping and muttered directly. "Ball." Oberon voted. "Ball is young, but his plan is very detailed, and I think he can give it a try." Balliston looked at the young white-armored knight. His words were reserved, but he did not hide his recognition. Chapter 120 Appointment. When Leonor saw that the 3 ministers in front of the emperor abstained from power, he agreed and immediately cheered up and stood up and shouted, "Ball, your Majesty." Bor, wearing white armor, quickly knelt down on one knee. "From now on, you are the royal guard and also serve as the commander of the Togman city battle." Leonor first transferred Bor's position to regularize White Knight. Bor didn't say anything, and buried his head directly on the ground. His shoulders kept shaking. "Jetter, the Storm 32 Regiment." Leonor ignored Bor and shouted again, "Your Majesty." Bor, with a strong beard, quickly got up and stepped out of the line and fell to his knees. "The 71st Royal Guard, Grassi Bear, the 39th Royal Brigade. Bald Polland, the 13th Iron Guard Regiment, Rakad Geld." Every time Leonor pronounces a number and a name, one of the officers below will fall out of the line and kneel down. When the 3 infantry regiments and the chief officers of a cavalry regiment are in place, he directly announced, "After the discussion just now and the discussion of the imperial meeting, I decided to organize you into a temporary legion, commanded by my royal guard Bor, and follow his order to conquer the Togman city." "Yes, my Majesty." The 4 officers did not dare to hesitate. "Ball, the team you want is here. According to your vision, I will satisfy everything you ask for. Tell me, can you destroy the Breck family?" Leonor once again looked at Bol, who had been burying his face on the ground. "Ask, Your Majesty. You are my god, and I will destroy the Breck family." Bol raised his tears and knocked his head down again. "What would you do if they don't obey your orders?" Leonor pointed his hand at the 4 officers including Jito, Grassi, Bald, and Record. "Kill." Bor raised his head and gave a reply without hesitation, causing the 4 people kneeling beside him to feel sad. What would you do if the soldiers were afraid of war and play, and did not take the battle seriously, disrupting the team's will to fight? Leonor asked again. Kill. Bor's reply was decisive. Okay. I'm waiting for you to bring Breck's head to me. Leonor waved directly. Thank you, Your Majesty. Bor kowtowed hard again, then stood up, turned to face the 4 officers, bowed slightly to them before walking aside. Listen to others, including you 4, too. You are not commanders now, but it does not mean that you are not commanders in the future. I have sent crows to the princes of the Stormland and asked them to go to Fengxi Castle to state their actions, but all those that are not expired are classified as traitors. Do you understand? Leonor pointed to the commanders except Bor and said a sentence to them, asking them all to lift their heads and show their joy. Look, long live my king. Barry Dondarrion spoke first. Long live my king. The officers began to shout, and the voices came from afar, making the soldiers nearby look at each other. After shouting a while of slogans, the military meeting ended, and the regiments began to act on their own, either resting on the spot or preparing to march. Leonor handed over the battle against Tongman City to the new Imperial Guard Bor, and then left 2 regiments in the Jimmy Kun City to be ready to respond at any time. He took the remaining 7 regiments to Fengxi Castle. They will be there waiting for the visits of the princes of the Stormland and the result of the conquest of the Tongman City under the dome castle of Fengxi Castle. Leonor rode on the street with a newly tamed war elephant, looking down at the people on both sides of the street, feeling a little sigh. The last time he accompanied Renly back to deal with Stannis, he was eager to return to King's Landing City to handle political affairs, so he did not enter Fengxi Castle at all. It has been almost 20 years since he was summoned to Red Castle. Fengxi Castle, which I hadn't seen in 20 years, still maintained its appearance as a child. Leonor returned to the large living room of Fengxi Castle. Looking at the wooden table sitting with Master Clizon back then, he couldn't help but feel a lot of emotion in his heart. Stannis once protected him and Renly here, and also tried to kill him and Renly here. Master Clizon was also dead, and it is said that he was poisoned to death by Melisandre. Leonor walked around the wind bowl and finally came to the squatter where he had been away from the war. He saw that it was now pitch black and empty. Everyone go out. Let me be quite alone. Leonor stepped back and sat alone in the corner of the ground, slowly closing his eyes to rest, recalling the past. When he recalled the past, his body naturally fell asleep. Leonor's soul naturally woke up and floated out of his body. He stood still. He could urge his soul to parade at will, but he didn't want to move. He just waited quietly. Standing there, it blends with the darkness of the underground in the entire Fengxi Fort. Every brick body, every piece of soil. When the thoughts are completely integrated into matter, Leonor wakes up from his contemplation, and a castle appears inside his soul. This castle stands above the waves, facing the bombardment of thunder and storms. Tightly, strong and never compromise are the whole picture of Fengxi Castle. Well, is this the magic in the Windswift Castle? Leonor felt the Windswift Castle in his soul and could suddenly realize that this was probably the spell set by the city builder Brandon and the Son of the Forest. Magic and Taoism are interconnected. The spells of the builder Brandon and the Son of the Forest are similar to the maze of the Red Fort. They are essentially spells formed by the interweaving of spiritual thoughts of creatures, but the spells of the Red Fort can only have psychedelic effects. It is impossible to find an authentic entrance, and the curse of Windbreath Castle is much higher, which gives the castle the power to fight against the storm. When Leonor was a child, he could only vaguely feel the thoughts in the walls of Fengxi Castle. Now that he has practiced and traveled to the old place, he feels the curse of the entire castle. After slightly feeling the way the spell runs, his soul floats in the air and changes slightly, and in a flash, it turns from a transparent human form into a solid dome castle, solid and tight, standing in the strong wind, rain and thunder. It can be used as a visual object. It's really good. Leonor restored his soul to its original state, and his face was very satisfied. He had already understood the spell in the castle. The foundation of Taoist art in the ancient world is the object of visualization. What Leonor has always visualized is the view of the star gods. In the Taoist scriptures, this kind of visualization is very low level, just visualizing the sun, moon and stars in nature, leaving the clear light of the sun, moon and stars in the soul, and is used to enhance its own temperament, without any aggressiveness at all. So don't say it's to the visualizations that carry the supreme secrets of time, space, past, darkness, light, etc., such as Shangdao, Tachchen Temple, and Zhuanshan Pavilion. are not even as good as some visualizations that can transform the inner demonic thoughts into Dingjia divine generals. This time he understood the spell in Fengxi Castle and successfully visualized it in his heart. He got the true intention of Fengxi Castle to stand firm against the storm. Next, as long as he practiced the spell, you can cast some spells that can interfere with the matter, such as activate an invisible water flow or soil to create a protective barrier, and have the ability to initially defend against dragon flames. Since the wind and vast castle can be transformed into a visual object, the Great Wall of Desperate, Leonor was very happy to successfully visualize the wind and vast castle. The magical creation of the Son of the Forest is still powerful, but in this way, he can only defend himself against the dragon in advance. Yan, if you want to really fight against Long Yan, you have to find other magic. If Fengxi Castle can do it, is it okay to Desperate Great Wall? Chapter 121 The Rebellion of the Princes. The Great Wall of Desperateness is still in the north, but the Windsea Castle is in the moment. Leonor visualizes the entire Windsea Castle every day, comprehends the spells imposed by the Son of the Forest and Brandon in this castle, and applies it to the expulsion. The magic of things completely ignored foreign affairs. Until the end of the war in Tongman City, the Royal Guard Corps led 3 infantry regiments and 1 cavalry regiment and spent 4 days breaking the Tongman City before the pre-prayer period of the princes scheduled by Leonor, and all the rebellious Breck family in the Brook City were executed. All his heads were cut off and sent to Fengxi Castle. Don't show it to me, just hang it outside the castle and let the princes who came here take a look. So far, how many princes have come? Leonor waved his hand to Brienne, who came to report his military achievements, and ask about the worship situation of the princes in the Stormland. The leaders of the above families have arrived in the Elor family in the Hay Hall, the Sirmi family in the Harvest Hall, the Tass family in the Mulan Hall, the Fear family in Luomu City, and the Dondirian family in Black Harbor. Renly reported the list of princes who had arrived at Fengxi Castle. How many days will I have to visit? Leonor frowned slightly. These princes were basically not involved in the storm areas of the rebellion. They were all loyal to themselves. Those princes who came to visit within a specified period of time were actually one of them. Didn't come. Tomorrow is the last time. Brienne bowed slightly. Prepare to hold a military meeting the day after tomorrow, and prepare all the soldiers. Leonor closed his eyes. This did not give himself a chance to have a peaceful annexation. Yes, time passes by in a blink of an eye, and most nobles never disappoint people. In the matter of disappointing people, Leonor directly convened a military meeting, allowing all regiment-level officers and loyal princes to attend the meeting. At the meeting, he praised the excellence of the new Royal Guard Corps, appointed him as the governor of the new Stormland, and temporarily managed Vivian. The princes of the Stormland commanded the Stormland army, and as for the original Stormland governor Donald Noy, they were transferred back to him to serve. I gave time and opportunity for those traitors, but they did not cherish it, so I decided to destroy them to punish them for their actions in the Golden Group's invasion war. Who do you have any opinions? Leonor directly put the future in a direct way. The princes of Stormland who were seen were deemed traitors and decided to conduct expeditions to ask the opinions of the families such as Sirmi and Tass. My Majesty, please let the Knights of Mulan Hall be your swordblade pioneer and kill those betrayers. Earl Sir Wyn Tass, Earl of Mulan Hall, stepped out directly to stroke his chest with his hands. Very good, worthy of being our Twilight Star. Leonor nodded in praise. Sir Wyn was Brienne's father. Whether he was sincere or not, he was very satisfied with a supporting actor. Thank you, Your Majesty. Which princes we will conquer first? Sir Wyn asked about the order of the war. Pick it up. Leonor did not answer Sir Wyn, but waved his hand and asked the guards to set up a sheepskin painting with a table-sized map of the storm, pointing to the areas marked red on it. At present, most of the rebellious princes are concentrated in the rainforest and border areas. Some are concentrated and some are scattered. Greenstone Fort, Rainhouse City, Fog Fort, Stone Helmet City, Nightsong City, Changong Fort. Leonor. Each when I read a place name, I pointed to an area on the map and finally looked at the officers. Come on, let's express your opinions and see where we start. I have only one goal, not let any traitor go, and you will express your needs and actions. Leonor asked the officers to post as before opinion with the last battle against Tongman City. The officers this time were much more rational. They were not in a hurry to speak. Some were patient, some were thinking carefully, and some began to whisper, I'll give you some time, and now I'll go to bed for the time being. Leonor saw that no one spoke, but he was not angry. The rebellious princes in the storm were too scattered, and it was impossible for the plan to conquer them to be released in one breath. While the break was over, Leonor retreated to the outdoors for a rest. Suddenly Brienne told him that Carl Fur, Earl of Luomu City, came to ask for a meeting. Let him come here. Leonor could probably guess the purpose of the Count of Luomu City. Your Majesty. Carl Fur with a beard on his chin came to Leonor and gave a salute. What do you want to say? Leonor looked at Carl Fair. This guy was nicknamed Silver Axe. His father, Earl Fair, duel with Robert and was killed by Robert, and he himself was. Leonor did not have a good impression of him when he surrendered to Robert during the war. Your Majesty, I would like to ask you to stop the war plan against the princes of the Stormland. This is not a just war. We are all nobles who have been loyal to the Baratheon family for generations. Carl first swallowed. Please Leonor, stop the war plan. So, you participated in the rebellion with them, right? Leonor's expression became serious, while Brienne, who was standing behind Carl, held the long sword at her waist, and would draw the sword if she didn't agree. No, Your Majesty, I didn't participate, I just knew. Carl straightened his waist, his face very nervous. You didn't give me any reminder. Leonor narrowed his eyes. It's true, Carl was a little ashamed, but then said, but this is not our fault. It's really that you have too high demands on us. I asked you to pay the tax you can't afford. Leonor asked. No, Carl was ashamed, and then said, you have put us in the obligation to war, but we have not given any reward. Reward? Is your land not given by the Baratheon family? Shouldn't you provide me with military service? You dare to ask me for rewards for this matter. Without the Baratheon family giving you land, you are just a group of inferior embryos wielding iron swords. Leonor was full of contempt for Carl and the so-called nobles. You, Silver Axe. Carl's face suddenly turned red, full of blood. You dare to tell me about this matter now, which means you and them are in the same group. Leonor's expression was extremely serious. He thought Carl was at most begging for mercy, but he could read the sentence directly. It turns out that he is one of the princes who are eager to rebel. Is there anyone among the princes who participate in the military meeting? Kill him. Leonor thought that there might be a traitor among the princes who were listening to his combat plan indoors. So he couldn't help but tighten his eyebrows and directly issued an order with a blink of an eye. The long sword covered with ice-cracked patterns was unsheathed, and Brienne cut off his head before Carl spoke. Don't alarm others. Send someone to control his men. You must live. Leonor waved his hand to summon the guards and quickly dispose of the body. At the same time, he asked Brienne, who was collecting the sword, to deal with Carl Fell's entourage. Make sure that the message does not leak. Chapter 122 Battle Plan. After a series of orders were issued, the guards were asked to clean up Carl Fell's body. Leonardo touched that the time was almost the same, so he walked back into the temporary military meeting with an expression as if nothing had happened and continued. Presided over the meeting after a round of discussion, the officers made a speech by Boer, who had just been promoted to the Imperial Guard, and expressed a general plan to concentrate their efforts to deal with the princes in the Rhine Forest, and then deal with the traitors on the other side of the border. The princes who rebelled in the Stormland were mainly distributed in the Rhine Forest and border areas in the south. Among them, the rebellious territories in the Rhine Forest area were more and more connected, so they needed to be eliminated first to avoid becoming a threat to the extent of their growth. As for the rebellious princes in the frontier, because the number of people is small, it can also be deterred by the Dorne and the river births of the same camp. Anyway, they cannot jump any big waves and can be dealt with later. Okay, just do as you say. So what about the specific combat plan? Leonor was very satisfied with the officers' plans. This was similar to what he thought in his heart, but the conquest of the rebellious princes still needed more detailed plans. Your Majesty, please allow me to speak. Bor, the commander of the 32nd Regiment of the Imperial Forest, stood up and requested to speak. You talk first. Leonor raised his hand. I need 2,000 golden dragons. Next is the speeches of the officers. During the recess, they had private discussions and allocated the rebellious princes. Each person was responsible for a place, and each proposed the respective needs of the golden dragon, the number of fiefs, and the corresponding forces and types of troops. Leonor asked the clerk of the meeting to record the troops, golden dragons and fiefs needed by each officer. After seeing the calculation results, he couldn't help but take a breath. He needed 30 regiments of troops to suppress the rebellious princes, 400,000 golden dragons and 30,000 households fiefs, which does not count as the allowances for ordinary soldiers and the pensions for soldiers who died in battle before conquering Pingjiukun Fort and Tongman City. He had already paid 100,000 golden dragons. If the allowances of ordinary soldiers and the pensions of the dead soldiers were included, it would be almost 300,000 golden dragons, and he would have to wait until the Storm Princes were completely eliminated. The total cost is less than 1.2 million to 300,000. War is indeed a waste of money, but then again, things that can be solved with money are not considered a matter. Your plans are all good. Do you know the local situation? Leonor was shocked by the war expenses and had to sting a little on the plan. The officers in the hall suddenly calmed down. They looked at each other and thought about their combat plans secretly, as if they had never understood the local terrain. Do you understand the strength of the princes, the strength of their castle, their own personality, and the situation in the territory? Leonor asked several more questions, making the officers even more obsessed. You have discussed the situation in advance. I am very satisfied with this, but I don't have so many troops, so it is impossible to organize so many battles at once. Leonor and others defeated the officers' momentum and began to explain the reality. The officers assigned their goals themselves, which is a good thing, which means they began to know how to cooperate with each other, which will be beneficial to future large-scale battles, especially those that require more than a dozen or dozens of regiments to cooperate. The battles organized by Leonor now always seem to be the size of tens of thousands of troops, but in fact, the number of troops he commanded himself did not exceed 2,000. However, this is how the scale was reduced to ensure that the orders he issued were implemented. Once the number of people exceeds this scale, the battlefield command will be stiff, testing the commander's ability to command and organize. Now the war in Westeros can only reach 2,000 people. No matter how large a war is, it cannot be started. Once the main general's eyes are beyond the eyes of the Lord, the soldiers are in a mess, and there is no enough benefit. Why do you call those who are soldiers who have no power will die? Will they 2 silver deer a month? The troops I have now can support the territory of 2 to 3 rebel princes. Which 2 will be attacked first, and who will fight? Leonor got the problem when the officers heard this. They immediately started to argue, and their opinions were no longer as high-spirited and unified as before, and they began to fight for each other. Your Majesty, start the Greenstone Fort. Your Majesty, I think I should fight the Crow's Nest City first. Fighting Woolen City first. Every officer has a goal. If there is a sequence, they undoubtedly hope to first hit the target they chose so that they can show their abilities. Leonor originally wanted Brienne to come out to take over, but suddenly remembered that she was sent to capture Carl Fell's entourage, so she had to get up by herself. Quiet. The heavy and long sound suddenly suppressed the noisy sound. After discussing it, you can't repent again once you decide, and the selected goals cannot be deviated from reality. Leonor warned and asked the officers to reach an agreed opinion. There was a king pressing on it, and the officers fell silent and began to communicate in a low voice. After about half an hour of conversation, they finally reached an agreement and chose Crown Nest Fort and Stone Helmet City as their goals. This was done to cut off the Rhine Forest. It also has a connection with the outside world and border areas. After a quarrel, the combat meeting finally completed the resolution. Leonor issued an order according to the discussion of the combat meeting. He would divide 2 routes to conquer the Crow's Nest City and the Stone Helmet City in the Stormland, with the Imperial Guard Boar as the commander-in-chief, and lead 5 regiments to support the formation at the Vulture's Nest City. The commander of the 32nd Royal Line Regiment, Gito, led 3 regiments to attack the Crow's Nest City, while Grossi Bayer of the Storm 71st Storm led 4 regiments to attack the Stone Helmet City, and other golden dragons. Fiefs prior rewards and all the food and grass are given. Do you have any opinions on this conquest? Leonor gave the order almost the same, and suddenly remembered and asked the princes such as Sirwin present, Your Majesty, we are willing to fight for you. Sirwin Tas was as loyal as ever, and the other lords nodded. Okay, since you want, then send out knights and form an army alone. How many people can you send? Leonor became serious. There are 39 knights in Newland Hall. Sirwin did not dare to repent and quickly revealed his troops to participate in the battle. There are 78 knights in the Hay Hall and 200 entourages. There are 123 knights in the Harvest Hall and 400 followers. The princes gathered together in all their troops, with a total of nearly 400 knights and nearly 1,000 entourages. Although they were not large, they were also very elite, making them unrealistic in cooperating with the existing military sequence, but they were sent. It's good to go to the princes from other places. Leonor thought for a while and said, You are considered as an army. You can elect a commander and then capture Fort Fairwood for me. I will give you as many military rations as possible. As for the reward, breaking Fort Fairwood is considered to be 2,000 golden dragons and killing aides. Firwood's 1,000 golden dragons. Leonor directly began to clearly mark the price. To urge these noble soldiers to take action, the key point was money. When he heard the reward given by Leonor, the lords such as Serwyn, who were originally in a low spirit, suddenly became energetic and shouted, "Long live your majesty!" They were obviously moved and were thinking about how to break it. Fort Firwood, how should you take this reward if you get it? If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 123, New War Mode. When the combat plan is determined, the rest is the execution issue. The officers under Leonor were all from small nobles or civilians. Everyone had full fighting spirit and wanted to be promoted to the class with their merits. However, the princes in the Stormland had no fighting spirit, but they longed for wealth. Those who desire merit will be given promotion channels, and those who desire wealth will be given gold and silver wealth. Then the remaining one is the cost. War requires money, food, military resources, and various costs. Leonor's treasury is full, and there is no need to worry about the cost issue. The original motivation has also been solved, and it also gives the officers enough guidance and clear goals. The next step is to see if their cooperation is tacit. Leonor was in charge of Fanxi Fort, dispatching money and grain in the center, and appointing officials to do a good job in production and territorial recycling. He expected that it would take half a year to completely quell the rebellion in the storm, but the eagerness of the officers greatly shortened this time. Within a week, Crown Nest Fort and Stone Helmet City were wiped out. 3 weeks later, most of the Rainforest rebellious cities were captured, leaving only scattered remnants of forces fleeing into the wilderness to resist guerrillally. But these were no longer the weather. Leonor made an adjustment here, promoted the general who performed well, leaving only the cavalry team to kill sporadic forces, and other troops went to the frontier to suppress the rebellion under the command of Bor. The army belonging to Leonor was a big killer. And the lords of Sir Wintas and other Stormland were still outside Fort Firwood, debating who should attack and break the city. How to rob and share the bounty afterwards. The result of inefficiency was that when Leonor's army entered the border, it was also divided into groups, and it took only 1 month to break through Quan Chi City, Yedge City and other places. In 2 months, the territory of the Storm Rebellion, except Fort Firwood, had been completely broken, and the entire rebellion was almost over. What a bunch of wastes. Tell them that if they can't break Fort Firwood within a week, then don't fight anymore and hand over the territory to me. I can't expect them to protect the land of the Baratheon family. Leonor gained a new understanding of the aristocrat's abilities, which allowed Brienne to give a deadline. After Leonor set a deadline for the families of Tas, Sirmi and Elor, he handed over the subsequent production recovery work of the Stormland to the new Stormland governor Bor, and the new Archbishop Will of Winsburg. Remember, the people are the most precious wealth on this land. We must ensure that they can farm smoothly on their own land, develop more technology, and have more trees in the Stormland. You can build logging farms and wood processing. You can also try to burn them. Essential charcoal. Refined charcoal is an essential thing for smelting. Faced with Leonor's plan, the new governor Balin Archbishop Agsi Lyanlian said that he would definitely manage the storm better and ensure that wealth would flow directly into the kingdom's vault. Well, you know, Leonor nodded reservedly, and finally looked at Balin Agsi, and pondered for a moment. Bal, considering your outstanding performance in this anti-rebellion war, I decided to grant you 300 fiefs. As your family inheritance fief. You can establish your own family. Bor was a civilian guard selected by Balliston, and was not from a noble or knight family. Your Majesty. Bor, who was in white armor, raised his head, with a little surprised expression. I am already an Imperial Guard. The Imperial Guards and the Night Watchman both made oaths to not marry, not to have fiefs, or to have children. The Imperial Guard only said that he would not marry, not have a fief, nor would he have children, but he did not say that he would not have a fief. As for the descendants, do you have no brothers? If you don't have one child, you will adopt a child. Many children lost their parents in the war. You can specify one or more heirs. Pass on your knowledge, courage and sincerity. Leonor waved his hand directly. Thank you, Your Majesty. Facing Leonor's final praise, Bor knelt down with tears in his eyes and thanked him with tears in his eyes. Think about your family name and proverbs. Well, Leonor smiled and waved his hand to make Bor stand up, while looking at the new Archbishop of the Windsnack Castle beside him. Your Majesty, well, dressed in a priest's uniform and looked thin, quickly bent down. No need to do this. I won't reward you today. You are the talent recommended by Agshi to me. Use your knowledge to help Bor manage the Stormland. At the same time, think carefully about the family you want to build in the future. I will not be stingy. His own reward. Leonor did not give a substantial reward, but drew a cake. The 7 gods are above me. I am willing to offer all my loyalty to your majesty. Will also kneel down to the ground when facing Hulbing. Okay, don't do this. Get up. All get up. All get up. Loyalty is not for words. You have to practice and manage the storm well. That is, loyalty to me. Leonor waved his hand to get the 2 guys up. There was still a bunch of guaranteed words after Bor and Will stood up, but these were not what Leonor wanted to hear. The work of the Stormland was successfully handed over, and Leonor was too lazy to wait for the battle report from Fort Firwood. He set off directly and returned to King's Landing with Metz. As for Oberon, Balliston and Vincent, he had already returned one step ahead of him. Junland City is here, and there is a little chaos there. Leonor met a secret messenger sent by Vincent on the way, and after shutting away Metz and Brienne, he had a secret meeting. Can you confirm it? Leonor stared at the round-faced little boy expressionlessly. He was about 8 or 9 years old, named Podrick, and was the entourage accepted by Vincent. Yes, Lord Vincent has found out that the parrot in the number 9 cage died of a chronic poison. Podrick nodded nervously. The Crown is the place where Leonor raises cats, dogs, birds and birds. There are ferocious fighting dogs, lazy bravos cats, and various eagles, birds and beasts. These animals are divided according to numbers. Some are used as eyeliners and some are used as beast fighting. The parrot in the cage number 9 is an ornamental beast on the surface, but in fact it has another function, that is, to serve Leonor. Try the meal. While Leonor left King's Landing, the parrot in cage number 9 was responsible for tasting the meal for pregnant Amelia. The parrot is now poisoned to death. There is no doubt that someone has attacked the pregnant Amelia, but fortunately, he was blocked by the parrot and Amelia had nothing to do. Can you confirm who poisoned it? Leonor asked. Mr. Vincent said that the cook and the baker who was in charge of cooking fell into the river and drowned, and could not be found. Haha, you're very good. What did you do before? Leonor already understood almost, but he was teasing. He liked Podrick very much. This kid was very honest and clever. I am the servant who is responsible for taking care of the cage number 9. Podrick was a little restrained. I understand. You will be responsible for the crocodile from now on. Arrange other birds and beasts to try my food, Lord Namai and the Queen, and you will do it yourself. Leonor nodded. Yes, thank you for your majesty. Podrick hurriedly thanked. Chapter 124. Make money. There is a rule in power struggle, that is, as long as the black man does it cleanly and does not leave enough evidence, it is allowed by default. The person who poisoned Amelia did not expect that Leonor had considered dietary safety, but he also dealt with the associated cook and baker in time, which was a successful kill. Leonor did not have sufficient evidence and could not pursue it. He could only pretend that this was not the case and wait until Amelia gave birth successfully. When Leonor returned to King's Landing, the upper and lower servants in the Red Fort had been replaced by Vincent, and all of them were under political review to ensure that each servant was innocent and that his family was in King's Landing. Nearest control. In this way, the consequences must be taken into account when those servants are bribed and made small moves. These are all secret confrontations, and on the surface they are completely unaware. Leonor only listened to Vincent's report in private, and then pretended that nothing happened. After Fort Firwood was defeated, he began to calculate the war expenses and harvest, as well as the reward issues of senior military officers. Rewards in war are given to subordinate officers and soldiers to inspire their performance on the battlefield, and treatment of senior officers requires additional rewards. There is nothing more pleasing to those senior officers than the inherited fiefs passed down from generation to generation. The fiefs are issued by the kingdom's treasury. If they want to maintain this fief, they must sacrifice their lives to the kingdom. This is also the lie the noble group that Anno has always wanted to build has begun. The list of officers was drawn up by Balliston, and Leonor signed a reward, and a certain number of inherited fiefs were added to the outstanding officers after completing the rewards to senior officers and subsidies and pensions to soldiers. All war expenses have been calculated in order to conquer the rebellious storm princes and various consumption accounts. Leonor spent a total of 960,000 golden dragons. Everyone says that when a cannon fires, it's worth 10,000 taels of gold. I don't have a cannon, it's still worth 10,000 taels of gold. Leonor sighed at the war bill. He was still going to war with people in his own territory, and there was no need for many things. After turning around, it still took so much money, and most of the vaults accumulated in 3 years were instantly empty. War is a waste of money. If you want to win, you have to constantly invest resources including manpower, food, iron and wood. As for harvest, gold and silver are impossible to get into his hands anyway, and he cannot get from an ordinary soldier. They picked out these things from their hands, otherwise his army would have no motivation to fight in the future. If you want to say that the harvest is not completely unreal, Leonor successfully recovered a large area of land from the rebellious lords during this trip. 70% of the land in the Stormland was under his control. In cooperation with the king's leadership and the western region, he was now nobleman with the most land in Westeros. No less land is a valuable resource, but these valuable resources are in the sustainable supply of crops such as food and wood, not its own value. Leonor looked at the vault that had disappeared for half of it, and he felt very melancholy. He thought about the northern border that had not yet started, the Tyrell, who was always ready to move, and Mardell, who was watching the fire from the other side of the river, so he decided that he had to reinstall the vault. Get full. Make money. Where do you need to make money? After thinking about it carefully, Leonor finally turned his attention to the Church of the Seven Gods. Now the only one who can be used for him to peel off his bones is the church. Leonor thought of a plan to summon Agsi, one of the 9 ministers in affairs, to ask him about the progress of the legal editing. Your Majesty, I have read many previous classics and classified many laws according to your requirements, including land law, robber law, robber law, robber law, robber law, and so on. Agsi, wearing a brown priest suit, answered several completed laws. Is there any finished text? Leonor asked. Yes, but I didn't bring it here today. Jesse expressed a little apology. That's okay, just send someone back to get it. Speaking of which, thank you so much. The priest Will you recommended for me before, that guy is very good. I have appointed him as the Archbishop of Stormland. Leonor asked. Agsi chatted and mentioned Will, the Archbishop of the Stormland, who was appointed by him. Your Majesty, you will never regret this decision. Will is an excellent priest who is proficient in accounting. He will govern your territory well and make the people feel the faith of the 7 gods more. Agsi, hearing Leonor's words, he showed joy on his face. The person he recommended was valued by the king, which also means that he was valued by him. This is exactly what I want to do. Over the years, people's belief in the 7 gods has faded. I really want to revise people's beliefs. Speaking of which, do you recommend it to me by any monk who is proficient in scriptures? Ano nodded slightly, and seemed to be interested in the 7 gods church. And if you have any doubts, you need to find a monk. Your Majesty, I am familiar with the 7 divine sacrificial 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 sacrific. I kept thinking, what is the 7 gods for us? Leonor made a puzzled expression. Jesse showed a puzzled expression. What is the 7 gods? This kind of question really made him ask, which monk dared to raise such doubts? What are the 7 gods in our kingdom? Leonor corrected his problem again. The 7 gods are the representative of all goodness. The 7 gods are called 7, and they are actually 1. They are the creator and nourisher of the world, waiting for the end of the world. Because of the 7 gods, people have goodness in their hearts and only have goodness in their hearts. Hope. Adrasi was a little confused about what Leonor meant, so he memorized a passage of scripture, paused slightly and said, Your Majesty, your rule over the country is in line with the guidance of the 7 gods, allowing the poor to have land and make the soldiers braver. You don't have to doubt the 7 gods, really. Do you think what I did is in line with the teachings of the 7 gods? Leonor was shocked. Why did you suddenly change your face? Could it be that my lectures enlighten your Majesty? Agsi blinked his eyes first when facing Leonor's expression, then nodded surely. Of course, my Majesty, now the King's Landing city has become clean because of your ascension, and people have a job and no longer lazily drink all day long. You are definitely a wise monarch, a gift from the 7 gods to us. Jesse started flattering directly. Monster Agsi, I feel so comfortable with what you said. Leonor smiled. Then I will tell you now that I have received guidance from the 7 gods. The 7 gods think that the church will be filthy. Agsi was almost furious when he heard Leonor's words. What did His Majesty say? Did he get the guidance of the 7 gods? What is he trying to do? Chapter 125 Fringe Characters. What does this king want to do? Is he considered blasphemy of the seven gods? Various problems flew over the white-haired head of the monk Agesi, and he was even afraid to speak. Am I considered blasphemy of the seven gods? Leonor saw that the old monk did not speak, but he didn't want to let him go, so he took the initiative to ask, Your Majesty, have you really received the revelation of the seven gods? Agesi made a teaser and didn't know what His Majesty's words meant. Do you think I'm going to tell lies? Leonor asked back. No, I mean, you said the church would be filth. Agesi naturally did not dare to question Leonor. In the chaos, he thought of Leonor's words just now. Isn't it right? Leonor asked back. This, Agesi glared, not knowing how to answer this question. As the spokespersons of the seven gods, the bishops shepherd the world for the seven gods, but what about them? Extraordinary, greedy, and the consolidation of wealth is piled up like a mountain. Leonor stopped his words in time, afraid that he would say it. As he said that, saliva flowed out. Your Majesty, you have already collected taxes from the church. Agesi realized what Leonor meant. It turned out that he was short of money, but last time he had passed the church tax, land tax, clock tax, assessment fees and other aspects to the church collects taxes, but I'm short of money now. Leonor complained in his heart, but his face looked serious. The church cannot be greater than the king. All the seven gods monks must be unified in the management of the kingdom. I will follow the guidance of the seven gods and recorrect the rules. The seven gods church has the right to collect taxes. They will require believers to hand over 1/10 of their property. This is a tithe. Monks and nuns preside over weddings and funerals, and will collect weddings and funeral expenses. This is another disguised tax. Not only taxes, the church also lent usury to nobles, knights, civilians and merchants, and 9 out of 13 returns is just a basic operation. Leonor said that their wealth was piled up like mountains and was definitely not a silence. Leonor not only fell in love with the wealth of the church, but also the organizational structure of the church, which is an organization that integrates multiple functions such as finance, organization, and publicity. He will take it into his hands no matter what. Your Majesty, Agesi was speechless when facing Leonor, who had appeared in vain. Is this guy crazy? When the cruel Meg suppressed the church, he just wanted the church to surrender, but the guy in front of him actually wanted to completely put the church in his palm. Your Majesty, I don't know how to evaluate your behavior. I just want you to let me go. Agesi was discouraged. I'm not a bandit if I let it go. Leonor smiled angrily when he heard Agesi's words, saying that he was like a bandit. Agesi wanted to say, what are the differences between you and a bandit, but he didn't dare. After all, the king in front of him wiped out the Lannister family and ended the existence of the Western Front with his own hands. Come on. Agesi, recommend the right talents to me. Leonor showed up directly and stopped pretending. Since you don't do it, I won't force you, but you want to recommend talents to me. How is this possible? Your Majesty, what do you think of me? Agesi was a little angry. He was a devout believer of the seven gods, pious believers. Agesi, as a devout believer, what do you feel when you look at the monks committing sins? Don't you expect the seven gods to preside over justice? Leonor quickly grabbed the question and asked back, You? Agesi looked at Leonor with horror. This guy dared to compare himself with the seven gods. Forget it, I won't tell you anymore. Tell me, do you have any talent recommendations? Leonor's face turned cold. This was Elmhead, and it didn't make sense at all. The cold atmosphere was like a basin of cold water, which instantly poured on Agesi's head, making the monk feel as if he had fallen into an ice cave. His hands and feet were cold. He could have a premonition that His Majesty the King had a showdown against him and would never allow him to stay out of it. If he disagreed, he would definitely be killed. Do you have talents? Do you have talents? Just think about it quickly. Your Majesty, you can find a liar to do this. Agesi swallowed. Is there such a person in the church? Leonor raised his eyebrows slightly. In the church, Agesi seemed to have swallowed a fly. Sometimes he felt that every bishop in the church was like a liar, but only for bishops. Those monks and nuns were good. No, some monks are not good people either. They love to lie. Some people like little boys, and some nuns like to bully people. Say, Leonor was a little impatient. Why did this guy just sluggishly? Your Majesty, I recommend a monk. His name is Bald Riley. Agesi shook his body and spit out a name directly. What are the abilities? How are you? Leonor was not very satisfied. Bald Riley, why is this name so creepy? He is a devout believer, but he is always used to lying and not caring about praying, but he is not bad. At least he doesn't drink secretly and doesn't like little boys. I don't know if he has the habit of going to a brothel, Jesse said hurriedly. What are the habits of telling lies? Leonor asked. He is used to lying, saying that his stomach hurts, and he always does not go to preach and pray for excuses. He just wants to sleep after eating every day, and is very lazy. She said in a muffled voice, I'm idle, right? It's a person. Write down his name. Where does he live? Leonor raised his hand and asked the scribe next to him to record his name. He can be found in a prayer hall east of the city. Say one more. Leonor was not very satisfied. He wanted to accept the church organization. It was not enough to just accommodate such a talent, and he wanted more. Miss Nass, who lives in a monastery west of the city, was always used to secretly stealing the food from the church, stealing the food to the poor, and then telling them that it was a gift from the seven gods. This is a good guy. Leonor was a little surprised. I can't introduce you to those bad guys who like little boys and those who like to bully and abuse others. That would make the church worse. Agsi replied truthfully. Okay, you're right. Leonor was amused by the old monk, but these people were very suitable for recruiting them. So he said, so, friend Carter in the north of the city is a blacksmith monk with good skills. He always likes to drink and fight in guilds, but he always likes to take care of those young apprentices. Yes, come again. Leonor waved quickly and asked the scribe next to him to remember his name. No matter what these people look like, this character alone is worth recruiting. Monster Bear in the south of the city. Sister Phil in the suburbs of the city, Agassi sighed. He was forced to do so, all of which were forced by His Majesty the King. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.